and this will be followed by the workshops. Workshops will follow a similar pattern, similar domain pattern. We'll have 4 parallel workshops today, and unfortunately, you've got to choose one. So the 4 workshops are going to be creating a neurodiverse organization, exploring information processing. So that's reading, writing, and concentration. Sensory sensitivity for neurodiverse colleagues is the third, and mental health in the workplace is the 4th. There's a few things to look out for today. So we'll have a break scheduled at 10:40. Each session will last about 15 minutes, no more if we're to keep on schedule. Each domain area will typically include a session on best practice and culture in the workplace, and then a high-level look at some of the tools. So that you can, if you haven't come across people with specific disabilities in your workplace, you'll get an understanding of how they can be productive. And the last thing is, at the end of today's session, each delegate will get a takeaway, a framework stroke checklist to help support a disability confident workshop. The document will also include a list of experts and solutions providers in each of the domain areas. Okay, right, so that's my lot, okay, to begin with. So we'll move on to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Aidan Healey. So Aidan comes from a background in psychology and leadership development. He completed his BSc in Applied Psychology at University College Cork and an MSc in Leadership at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Aidan is currently CEO of Lexic, a team of psychologists who support organizations to develop environments where people with neurodiversity can flourish. I'm delighted to welcome Aidan, another Irishman, to our league. Welcome, Aidan.
Good morning, Noel. Thank you very much for you and for BATA and for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to kind of open today's session. Let me just bring up my slides, Noel, and I just want to make sure you can see them before I get started. Can you see my title slide here?
Yes.
Brilliant. So look, good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see over 50 of you in the chat. Please do say hello, what organization you're from, why you came here today. Although I have a short 15 minutes with you, I do hope maybe to take a question at the end, or it'd be lovely to learn more about you as I am presenting. So look, I think, you know, we're talking today about the subject of neurodiversity and the subject of mental health. And I think it's important that we kind of start with this subject of diversity. You know, this is LinkedIn data from August 2021, and I think we've really seen the subject of diversity and disability become more front and center for so many organizations. And I think if you ask any modern business leader why it's important to get D&I right, they'll probably start with, well, it's just the right thing to do. And of course it is. There's obvious synergies between an ethical business, a caring business, and a modern D&I strategy. But I also think when organizations get D&I right, there's massive opportunities, whether that's capitalizing on new perspectives, appealing to new talent pools, enhancing the reputation of your brand. I really think a sound D&I strategy has big business benefits. And when it's done badly, it's not just embarrassing, it's detrimental to business, which is, you know, poorly considered communications, a poor adjustments process, I think really has the potential to cause serious offense, media backlash in some cases, and have long-lasting impacts. So I think although we're looking at embracing diversity more and more, we're often missing a group of people. This is data from CIPD 3 years ago, showing that, you know, if I was to open up your HR policy, your people management policies, your D&I strategies, the subject of neurodiversity doesn't often come up. And that's often because these differences are invisible or hidden or masked. It's because their differences might be stigmatized or stereotyped. And so therefore this group of individuals or these characteristics don't get the same prevalence on organizational agendas. And I think this is a real missed opportunity, because I think people with neurodifferences have so much to contribute to performance, creativity, innovation, and organizational results. As Noel said, I am the CEO of an organization called Lexic. If you don't know us, we are specialists in neurodiversity in the workplace. Been around for the last 14 years, now a team of 15 people, 50, not 15. And we really work kind of end to end with organizations right throughout the UK and Ireland. So I want to talk to you really about two things, which is first, what is this word neurodiversity? What are we talking about when we use this word? And why are we using this word compared to other more historical language? And the second thing I think is, you know, why is this relevant for your organization, or why should senior leaders care? So I think, as I touched on, you know, most of us, when we think of a D&I agenda, we think of something like moving from the image on the left, right, the all male, all white, middle-aged kind of board, to an organization that's inclusive of gender and race and disability and sexuality and age and religion and socioeconomic background and so on. But while all of those characteristics have a big influence on who we are, we also know that we all think differently, right? Most of you at some point in your career have been through some kind of work profile or personality profile. And really the nature of these profiles will say, what kind of work do you enjoy? What kind of work comes easy to you? And as you know, you could have two people with the same age, gender, race, sexuality, and so on, but they might have completely different personalities. They might approach their work in completely different ways. If I said to you that you are a very strong red, and I said, I'd like you to organize a conference like today, you would be saying, let's get on with this, let's make it happen. I'm on the phone, I'm getting things done. I don't have time for loads of plans and loads of detail and to talk to loads of people. We just need to make this happen. If you were a very strong blue, you would say, actually, we really need to think about this in a process way. We need a committee, we need a budget, we need a systematic approach, step by step, project manage, map it all out. And we know we're different like this, but we don't associate one type of thinking style when it comes to personality as better or more effective than the other. And we know that an effective organization and an effective team will have very different types of thinking. So when we're talking about neurodiversity, neurodiversity is really a shorthand for neurological differences. Differences in the way our brain works, differences in the way our brain is wired, and differences in the way, I suppose, our brain processes information and sees the world. And if you're not familiar with the word neurodiversity, I'm sure you're familiar with many of the common neurological differences. Things like dyslexia, which impacts reading and writing, dyspraxia, which can impact motor coordination, dyscalculia, which can impact numbers and mathematical ability, ADHD, which impacts focus and attention, and autism, which often impacts social interaction and social communication. So I think, as Noel said in his intro, people with neurodifferences are a very significant part of the population. And you already have people all around your organization with neurodifferences. They're your employees, your future talent, your customers, your supply chain. And yet many organizations haven't spoken to these individuals or really tried to understand their needs. And I think the reason for that is, I think if we're honest with ourselves, is most of us have grown up with these words or grown up with these labels to think about them using almost an entirely deficit model. And I think such a model, which I think almost focuses exclusively on a person's impairments, a person's limitations, ultimately doesn't lead us to really seeing that person as their full self, or even seeing them as kind of broken or ill. And I think it kind of sets up this dangerous duality, if that's the word, of, well, there must be those of us who have normal brains, who really think about things in the right way. And I guess there must be those of us who have disordered brains, who need to be fixed, or who think about things in the wrong way. And I think what I would say to you on this is, much like your kind of personality profile, context is kind of everything, right? So you might associate someone with ADHD as being impulsive, but actually in the right environment, that impulsivity can really lead to more rapid decision making. It can be making decisions quicker and faster than others. You might say someone is hyperactive, but actually in certain contexts, they can have high energy, stamina, they can actually do more work or do work faster than others. Or you might say, well, someone is easily distracted, they're moving around a lot, they can't sit still for too long. But again, in other environments, that can lead to someone being really highly creative and really actually coming up with many, many new ideas. And so I think the challenge is, to take dyslexia as an example, this is a study made by Dyslexia, the charity, looking at the perceptions of dyslexia amongst individuals with dyslexia and members of the public. And we can see here there's relative alignment when it comes to the challenges of dyslexia, the bottom two rows. But again, if I was to use words like artistic, creative, good at problem solving with dyslexia, these are things you probably don't naturally associate and you probably don't naturally think about. So I guess the reason I'm saying this to you is, mental health is also an important theme today. So, put yourself in the shoes of someone with a neurodifference. Put yourself in the shoes of being labeled with a deficit where people stereotype you and stigmatize you and shame you and judge you for who you are. How would that impact how you feel? How would that impact your confidence, your motivation, your self-esteem, your resilience at work, the very things many organizations say they really value? And, if you're listening to this and you don't have a neurodifference, we all know, I think, at a human level, what it's like not to feel safe. We all know at a human level what it's like when somebody takes part of our identity and shames us for it, or makes that part of us a judgment on all of us. So when it comes to neurodiversity at work, what we really see when we talk to people with neurodifferences is they hide, they mask, they remain invisible, they just work harder, they keep their head down, they find their own coping mechanisms. And that's often because of two big reasons, which is they don't feel psychologically safe to come forward and share their story, or two, they don't have confidence in the organization's adjustments process, the organization's policies, the organization's procedures, that actually coming forward and telling their story is going to make a positive difference for them at work. So in terms of what is neurodiversity and why are we using this term? What neurodiversity, the movement, is doing is challenging us to rethink neurological differences through the lens of human diversity. So it asks us to value diversity in neurological differences the same way we value diversity in gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. And instead of just focusing on people's impairments and limitations, actually, what if we saw people as a complex combination of cognitive strengths and cognitive challenges, just like we all see ourselves. So that's kind of an overview of what is neurodiversity. I think the second thing I want to talk about briefly in the time I have left is you might say, well, that's all well and good, but why is this relevant for organizations? Why is this relevant for the workplace? And what can we see and learn in a workplace context? And on this, I would say a few things. This is data from the Institute of Leadership and Management. So when it comes to the workplace, many leaders, many line managers really have a perception of, well, I'm afraid, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, I might have a perception there's extra work involved, I don't know what adjustments look like. And I think this also creates a real barrier to people feeling included at work. And I think in Lexic, the kind of reality we see in many organizations, if we bury our heads in the sand, if we don't consider neurological differences, we get kind of results like this, which is we become reactionary. So we only support individuals late in their journey or when they're in crisis, or they only share their story when they're in crisis. This low levels of awareness leads to a lot of unconscious bias, stigma. Employees don't know what to do, managers don't know what to do. So that leads to often very low levels of disclosure. Unestablished processes, again, under the Equality Act, the duty of care under the law can lead to tribunals, settlements, really poor levels of engagement from employees, stress, retention, presenteeism, and so on and so forth. But I think, what's exciting for us is we've really seen the conversation around neurodiversity move from this kind of moral argument, this legal argument, into more of a talent argument, which is actually what value can people with neurodifferences bring to the workplace? And it is that value that I think is so important. For example, this is an example from Ernst & Young talking about the value of dyslexia. And Ernst & Young recently founded a neurodiversity at work center in the UK. And essentially what EY is saying here is, if you think about the talents of reading and writing in a world of electronic signature and text-to-speech and Alexa and Siri and Cortana and so on, are these the skills of the future we're really going to need? But actually, if you think about those skills of dyslexia, thinking differently, thinking creatively, these are the skills organizations are really going to need as we drive forward into the future. And one final example, if that sounds a bit too qualitative for you, this is Anthony Pasilio. He's the head of work at JP Morgan Chase. And for him, he's saying, look, this is not about charity. This is not about ticking boxes and reporting numbers. This is about talent, and we recognize that fully. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying everyone on the autism spectrum you hire is going to be a genius or 48% more productive or a Rain Man or some of those stereotypes. But what we can see is people with neurodifferences, because they think differently, can possess unique skills, can possess unique talents, and they can actually get certain types of work done much quicker and really thrive in certain types of environments. So I'm at time, so I will leave it there. I think just as a closing message, this is a very significant part of the population. This is as I said, your employees, your future talent, your customers, your supply chain. And I think we have taken a historical deficit model that shames people, that excludes people, that keeps them in the shadows. And I think we're really seeing now organizations that start to make positive investments and have positive conversations around neurodifferences. It's better for people, it's better for line managers, and it's better for organizational results. So thank you very much for listening. And Noel, back to you.
Oh, Aidan, thank you. That was a brilliant start. you know, I have 100 questions, but we're not going to get, maybe
Oh, well,
quick.
give me the big question, Noel,
Well,
if we have time for one or two.
That I think is, you know, was triggered at your very first, when you did the personality profile example.
Yes.
And so I could typically see perhaps somebody with autism, you know, having the features of being cautious, analytic, precise, and wanting time for things to make sure they get it right. And then you could have somebody who's got a dominance profile, who wants to get in there straight away, and he's communicating quickly and rapidly, and he's on the phone and he's moving. How do we help those two people within a culture to communicate in each other's language?
Sure. So I think it starts with not stigmatizing and judging someone's differences. You know, so imagine you're very highly introverted and you met someone who was extroverted. Would you label them as, oh, you must be on the working alone spectrum disorder, for example? So I think it starts by saying, this isn't a deficit, this is a difference. Then you need to understand some of the world of those differences. If I am off the scale on extroversion, this is the kind of person I am, this is the kind of person I'm going to be, this is what you need to know about me on my best days, and this is what you need to know about me on my worst days. Yeah. And similarly, I suppose, then working with individuals to say, look, these are some of the challenges you may come across. So if you are highly extroverted, you have to understand not everyone is going to be like you, and they may not have the same level of comfort in talking or having social interactions, or they may not love working in an open plan office. Yeah. And if you're introverted,
so, Aidan, sorry, we're running into Chris's time, which I'm.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But
I'm going on a bit of a rant here. So
no. But if this can be picked up perhaps in one of the workshops, I think it's a really important issue where you've maybe got cultures that are biased one way or another.
And look, I would just say it's about respecting differences, Noel. And we all know good organizations have different types of people and different types of thinking. That's what neurodiversity is about.
Yeah. Aidan, thank you ever so much.
My pleasure.
Next, I'm going to introduce Chris Griffiths. So Chris is from a company called Open Genius. Chris is a world-leading expert in innovation and mind mapping. He is also a best-selling author on creativity and innovative thinking. Open Genius, the company, is the creator of Iowa. Iowa is an inclusive, all-in-one mind mapping, whiteboard and collaboration app. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Chris. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Appreciate it. Aidan, great introduction as well. Let me jump straight into it. I'm going to share my screen. 2 seconds. Let me do that. Okay, right. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Brilliant. I really like the way you finished the presentation, Aidan. It's about looking at what value people with neurological differences can bring. And as somebody that's had an immense passion for understanding creative thinking, understanding the innovation process, I can tell you from working with organizations all over the world, people with neurological differences bring so much value to organizations, but it's not understood well enough. I mean, if you were to look at somebody like the World Economic Forum, they often publish what they think are the top 10 skills required for businesses to succeed. And their last publication, skills such as creativity, cognitive flexibility, problem solving, they're all up there in the top 10 required skills. And you know, that requires people to think differently. It requires organizations to think differently. And gosh, wouldn't life be a little bit boring if we all thought the same? Now, Open Genius, I set up, oh gosh, too long ago now, I think 16 years ago. And I've been very lucky in this organization. I'm going to share a little bit about my story later, but I've worked with CEOs, I've worked with royal families. We worked with Tony Bazan for many years. Tony obviously publicized mind mapping around the world, quite an inspirational chap. So I enjoyed working with him. And what that gave me was a wealth of connections around the world. And that wasn't necessarily from sort of the neurodivergent world, that was across the whole spectrum. And a few commonalities that I found with successful organizations has definitely come through over the time that I've been doing this. And I mean, if you were to think of where we are in today's world, it's such a fast-paced world. Things have changed so much. They were changing before we even had this horrible COVID situation. So if you were to look at what organizations need to achieve, they need to achieve their goals, or if they're a commercial organization, they need to achieve profitability. And there's one thing that I can pretty much guarantee is that if organizations keep doing the same thing, they're not going to get what they always got, as they say. I mean, if they keep doing the same things, they're going to be left way behind. The world is changing too quickly. So we all need to think differently. And adding people to your organization that do that naturally can make an absolutely massive difference. I'm going to ask you all a question, and I'm going to be checking the comments here as well. In fact, let me just bring the comments up so I can see them. How many of you agree that knowledge is power? How many agree that knowledge is power? Progress. Okay, a few people, yes, yep. And how many would agree that the use of knowledge is even more powerful? So knowledge is power, but the use of knowledge is more power. Yeah, it's already coming up in the chat. Depends if you can act on it. So what's more powerful than those two statements? So knowledge is power, the use of knowledge is power, but what's even more powerful? Lived experience, action, unity, all of these things are powerful. The use of knowledge is powerful, but it's the creation of new knowledge in this fast-paced world that really gives organizations the advantage over their competitors, or it helps them to achieve their goals. Innovation comes from the Latin innovatus, which means to change into something new. And to give you the best chance of changing into something new that is right for your organization requires creative thinking, it requires logical thinking. And the marriage of those two things actually allow organizations to be much more effective. Let me ask you another question. How many hours do you think you spent in your entire educational life learning mathematics? How many hours? How many hours do you think in total? Too many? Too many? 2,000? Yeah, it's several thousand hours. I mean, the average person would have spent about 5,000 hours learning mathematics. You know, if you did it in university, obviously that's going to shoot up. So between 5,000 and 10,000 hours learning mathematics. Let me ask another question. How many hours through your entire educational life did you spend learning how to learn, learning how to create, learning how to think? 0, 5, not enough. So I guess we didn't have creativity 101 lessons. We didn't have lessons about how people that were neurodivergent, that were autistic, that had ADHD were actually better at some things than others. What a crazy world we live in. So this is what Henry Ford was saying in his quote: thinking is the hardest work there is, which is probably why so few of us engage in it. And the worrying thing here is that our educational system is very much about knowledge. It's about filling the bottle. It fills children. It's an industrial age education system that fills people with knowledge, but doesn't teach people how to create new knowledge. And yet it's the people that create new knowledge that actually bring the most value to organizations. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is that, I've noticed in my career and in some of my own experience, my own life, that it's the people that couldn't conform in an educational system that bring the most value to organizations. They didn't fit in this industrial age type of thinking. They didn't fit in this one right answer thinking environment. So it's these individuals that can actually bring so much more to an organization. They might not have the grades, or they might not interview as well as others, but they can actually bring more value. And it's so misunderstood. So, inclusivity in the workplace, in organizations, it's not a nice to have. It's not just a corporate social responsibility. It's a self-serving need for an organization to have people that can actually bring new strengths and obviously new skills. Let me just carry on. So in my experience, the key to successful innovation programs within organizations is this simple term here, metacognition. It's the ultimate productivity secret. People think that word means thinking about thinking, but what it actually means is about, it actually means putting a strategy behind your thinking or the thinking of your organization. I mean, organizations that are actually more aware of metacognition and cognitive biases tend to do so much better. And there's a lot of research that shows that. So if you're running an organization and you're not taking all of these things into consideration, you're really leaving a lot of things on the table that could really help the business to accelerate. So metacognition is very important. And when you're looking at it organizationally, if you're going to put a strategy, how you can help your organization to innovate better, how you can help solve problems more efficiently, you have to be thinking, well, what skills do we need to do that? When you're in a situation where an organization is hiring people that potentially are not showing up well on the sort of academic scale, dangerous position to be in, because these unique individuals that think outside the box are absolutely vital. I talk about thinking outside of the box a lot, and I don't like it. I think you should think without the box, and many people with neurological differences think without the box. It's quite natural to them. This is me with the Dalai Lama. It was one of my greatest achievements and one of my worst failures. I was invited to the Petra Nobel Conference by King Abdullah II to facilitate a brainstorming session of Nobel laureates. And everyone there thought I did a great job, but what I found is that I didn't do a very good job because of the types of individuals that were in that organization, in that event, were very difficult to manage. And that really led me on to the next part of my journey, which was about putting processes behind innovation. And I've written several books on it. They're published in, nearly 20 languages now. I'm about to publish the second edition of the Creative Thinking Handbook. And interestingly, when I spoke to my publishers, Kogan Page, about the Creative Thinking Handbook, they said, what are you going to change, Chris? And I said, well, look, I missed such an important aspect of creativity in organizations in the first edition. And that was the organizational inclusion of a very diverse thinking team. And I think this, again, it's so important. If companies want to succeed, they have to have people that can think a lot differently. And thank you for the mention of AOA. AOA is a tech product that we've been working on for years. We believe that inclusion starts everywhere, and that technology doesn't necessarily have to be aimed purely at people that are neurodiverse for it to be fully inclusive. It's got to be used by neurotypical people and neurodiverse people and be very inclusive. And AOA is something that's come out of that work over the last 16 years. And it's been a really fun product to build. I haven't got much time, but I'm going to ask, I mean, how many of you like daydreaming? Any of you don't like daydreaming in the chat? I'm sure everyone likes daydreaming. I mean, how many of you have had a daydream this morning? Chronic daydreamer, yeah, I like it. How many of you had a daydream? How many of you been daydreaming while I'm talking? If you have, that's a good thing.
You're brave, Chris.
but just think about this. Just think about this. What does the teacher say to the child that daydreams in class? Exactly. Focus, focus. And, you know, there is a lot of benefit to people that can focus. But there's also a massive amount of benefit for people that can't focus, that think slightly differently, more visually. They like to allow their mind to wander. And what this article in the New Scientist was referring to was that when you actually daydream, your mind is not relaxing. It's going haywire. It's brilliant. Vacant Mind, Busy Brain was the title of the article. And they found that when people daydream, many areas of the brain fire up and allow new connections to be formed. This is why quite often people that are dyslexic, for instance, are able to create concepts that others simply can't. I mean, I remember meeting up with Renee Carroll, who was the host. Yes.
Chris, I could go on listening to you all day. But I'm sorry, we've reached our time limit.
I got it. No problem. I love talking about it all the time. I could do the same.
Thank you so much. Now, Chris's colleague Caitlin will demonstrate IOIL later, so you can see how his thinking has morphed into a fantastic product. Thank you ever so much. It's lovely to hear from you. So next, we migrate to some practical sessions. So we're basically moving in to a section on supporting people with neurodiversity, so including dyslexia, autism, and ADHD. This is about information processing, and we're going to have 4 speakers on this topic. The first one is Richard Orme. So the big question for Richard is, how does an organization just become reading friendly? So Richard, who's from the DAISY Consortium, is the leading expert in accessible reading in the world. But you can see that you will all feel like experts after Richard speaks. So I'm looking forward to this. So welcome, Richard.
Thank you very much, Noel. Just checking you can hear me. Yep, perfect. So thanks for that introduction, and hello everyone. So this section is entitled Reading Ramps, but I'll give a very short introduction to myself. And I was thinking about this as I was preparing for the talk. Very often I say that my career in accessible reading began when I was a teacher in an FE college and I had a student with a visual impairment. But actually the truth is my career began much earlier than that, in my young teenage years, when I was having a hobby as a computer user and a computer programmer. And unbeknown to me, I was supporting my brother with profound dyslexia as he was struggling with reading and writing. And because he had a younger brother who was techie and showing him how to use a computer and introducing him to a word processor with a spell checker and how to change colors and fonts and all these sorts of things, he told me many years later that that was really instrumental in him being successful in his school and in his university career. He went on to get a master's and runs his own business. So this talk is all about reading ramps, but really it's about the kind of things that companies can do, we can all do, to build accessibility, usability, personalization capability into digital reading, into the documents that we're creating. You know, for people with reading disabilities, being able to access information, being able to get access to the materials that float around in the world of work is a really big issue. And yet, with the power of technology and with skills and awareness, it is something that businesses can get right. It just requires awareness, maybe a bit of a shift in some of the staff's skills, and then you can deliver these reading ramps. So what do we mean by reading ramps? Well, there's a photo here of a curb cut. Reading ramps is more alliterative, isn't it, than reading curb cuts. This is maybe an analogy that you're familiar with, but you know, we have this principle that we don't just have these steep curbs everywhere between the street and the pavement. We have these ramps, and they're there, of course, to help people who've got wheeled suitcases. They're there to help people with a pushchair. They're there to help people with scooters, kids on scooters or whatever. They're there to help someone who maybe has strained their ankle doing the London Marathon and finds it easier to lift their foot. Oh, and they're also there for people who are wheelchair users. You know, by building accessibility into the infrastructure, we benefit everyone, just as we were hearing, not only a particular narrow specific use case. And yet without these ramps, without these curb cuts, without these drop curbs, it would be so difficult for someone to move around. And similarly, it's hard for someone to move around the digital document world without these kinds of provisions there, and yet they benefit everyone. Let's think then about folk who are neurodiverse and maybe have what in my world we refer to as a print disability. They struggle maybe with being able to process and read regular print, and they require some features to help them. Typical things that people rely on are the ability to change the text size. And very often just making the text bigger makes it easier for people to process, to read, to understand the content. And that's what we want in our documents, isn't it? Often folk will say that some fonts are harder for them to read, or more positively, that there are specific fonts or font styles which suddenly made the text much easier to read. I was at a conference in the States a couple of years ago, and I was showing an e-reading tool, and I was showing how you could change the font within it, within what looked like a kind of regular journal article. And I switched the font, and one person in the audience couldn't stop them and says, "I can read that." And it's someone who really struggled with reading academic papers, but by switching the font, suddenly it made it much easier for them. Another really important thing is spacing, and this can be things like having much bigger margins so the line length is shorter. And there's lots of research that shows that shorter line length really aids comprehension, reading speed, the ability of people with various print disabilities to be able to process those materials. But also line spacing, having bigger leading between the to the lines makes it easier for people to track and read. And also in some cases, word spacing, even letter spacing. Colors is another important thing. I remember working with a person with profound dyslexia who was also a teacher of kids with reading disabilities, showing her actually some of Dolphin's products in beta. We were doing some user trials. And she had a very specific color background that she really found so much easier to work with. In the, previously folk would maybe print out onto a particular color of paper. Maybe this is practice in some universities and schools. But for reading digitally, the ability to be able to customize not only the background, but maybe the text color, the color of links, and those sorts of things can really, enable someone to be able to read and study so much more. Read aloud, we're going to see some demonstrations of that later in this session, and we're beginning to see it built into just regular technologies. It may well be that the browser that you use, the word processor that you use now has a read aloud feature, but by using some of the tools like text help, there are some really cool advanced features that allow you to do things like maybe stop at the end of the current paragraph and customize more things like the highlight and those sorts of things. And then lastly, navigation. So So it's not just about reading the text. Sometimes as you enter into a publication, it could be a work report, it could be a journal, it could be a book, something that you're having to do for your professional development or whatever. Actually making sense of what that book is and how it's structured is an important part of being able to, do your learning and approach it and find your way around. So this is what we mean by navigation, and by creating good documents, you build those navigation features into the reading experience. All of these things really come to life in a digital world, and are possible with the tools that you use in your workplaces. So my kind of case here is that accessible documents are actually good documents, just as good street design and built environment design is also accessible too. So what are the sorts of things on a very practical level, as I was asked to Noel to refer to, could you do in your businesses to help you be confident that you're providing documents, you're creating documents, your colleagues are doing the same, that can be used by your staff, your customers, and other folk who need to? So one thing is make sure you use styles. So what do I mean by that? Within your word processor, for example, sometimes I see quite complex documents and everything is kind of normal style. And they've made headings by making the text bigger, making it bold, and maybe picking a different color. But that's not the way to do it. If you actually choose heading styles, which you can do from the ribbon in Word, and it has the same approach within Google Docs and any word processor, it then applies the styling for you, but it also automatically creates navigation in that document. So you can bring up, for example, a navigation pane on the left-hand side in Word, and you can then move around, like using a table of contents, really, your document. And this is useful for really quite short documents. You don't need much of a document before this becomes really useful. It makes it very helpful for people to maybe get an understanding of the overview of that document, and to be able to move around it really efficiently. And as you're picking those styles, if someone gets that document and wants to personalize it, they can do so really easily without having to kind of go through changing every heading. They can change all the headings in just a couple of clicks of the mouse. I mentioned color there, and one thing is to use color with real care. And contrast is an issue for some folk, and having sufficient contrast to be able to read a document, or to be able to change the colors to something that suit them, as I mentioned before. And by using styles, you open up these kinds of possibilities for people. Now, alt text is a text description that you would typically put behind an image. It can actually sit behind other things as well. And it describes with a textual description what an image contains, what the important intent of it is. And it's usually considered to be something that's for someone with a screen reader. But we increasingly see people who are using Read Aloud, which we'll come to in a moment, also benefiting from that image description. If someone's taken the care to kind of describe what an image contains, maybe it's a graph or points out something within the image, someone who's listening to Read Aloud, they could be on a bus with the document on a mobile phone in their pocket, and they're listening through headphones. They may not even be looking at the screen. And so the image description, the alt text in there, is great for someone who is maybe dyslexia and using a Read Aloud tool as well. So providing that image description, people like the option to be able to turn it on and off, but if you haven't put it there in the document in the first place, then they don't have that option. So that's another really good thing about good documents being accessible documents. Now, within the major word processors, they now have accessibility checkers, and this is just such a wonderful development. It makes things easier for advocates of accessible documents like me, but more importantly, it makes it so much easier for your staff, your colleagues, yourselves to be confident that the documents you're producing at least is passing the automated checks. It will typically do things like looking at color contrast, image descriptions, the use of styles and those sorts of things. And in a product like Microsoft Word, it won't only tell you what the issues are, it'll take you to them and then give you hints about how you can fix them as well. So do look at accessibility checkers in the tools. And if in your organization you do staff training, you offer training around the use of your word processing tools and so on, build awareness of the accessibility checkers into it. And as you build templates for use in your organization, make sure you run those through the accessibility checkers. So you're enabling people to create accessible documents and you're not creating an environment where accidentally they're creating barriers for people with print disabilities. And then lastly, this one is really critical. In some environments, we see where IT departments have really kind of, they want to, they're concerned about, viruses, malware, and also, people using computers for other purposes and so on. And sometimes they do things around locking those machines down. I mentioned a whole list of things on the previous slide about personalization. There isn't the font for people with dyslexia. There isn't the perfect size for people to read at. What is really key is personalization, people being able to choose exactly that color, the font they're familiar with, the spacing that works for them, for that particular time of day or that type of document. So allow personalization and encourage people to know that it's okay. If you provide a document to someone that you've locked that doesn't allow them to modify it and personalize it, you're limiting their abilities. So, allow folk and use formats that allow people to personalize things. There's only so much we can cover in a short 10-minute presentation. So if you want more information, a great place to go to is the UK Association for Accessible Formats, which is ucaf.org, UKAAF.org. And on that website, you'll find guidance on accessible documents. So there are documents, but there are also videos. There are links to other organizations where you can go and ask for help. There are user organizations and organizations that provide consulting services as well. So folks, good documents are also accessible documents that enable neurodiverse and people with print disabilities to do more at work and to make more of those documents you've put time into creating. So let's go out and make good documents.
Thank you, Richard. What a pro, just missed it by 1 minute. But thank you ever so much. There's, I think we've lost the ability to highlight here, but presumably it'll come back. There's one other thing. Lisa planned to attach document on making documents accessible as well. Supports exactly what Richard has been talking about. It's 101 stuff. So you should find it in the chat group. Be good to encourage your organization to adopt it. So the next session then is Stuart from Text Help, who's going to talk about reading and writing solutions on the desktop. Stuart, our speaker, has worked alongside large government bodies, small startup businesses, and everything in between. He believes inclusive technology is a great enabler. His company, Text Help, is one of the truly outstanding companies in the sector. They create technology to help people read, write, and communicate with accuracy and fluency. So this is going to be mostly on PC, Stuart.
That's right, yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks very much, Noel. Can you just confirm you can see my screen okay?
So, yes.
Perfect. I must say, I've been part of the conference now for the 2 days, and your introductions for the speakers have been tremendous. Everybody's marketing team must have wrote them for them because they've been very engaging, as have all the speakers so far this morning. Aidan, we've shared the stage a couple of times together, and brilliant as always, as was Chris and Richard there. As Noel mentioned, I'm going to be looking a little bit at some reading and writing solutions, touching a little bit on support for staff. And one key element I want to focus on as we go through is how actually supporting staff with neurodiverse conditions can lead to an organisation creating that inclusive environment, which I think is very important. So, as Noel mentioned earlier on, over 2 billion people worldwide have a neurological condition. And how that can affect some people is they may struggle with how they communicate, how they plan and prioritize, their memory, how they focus on concentration, their organization skills, or how they manage stress and learn new processes. And this can obviously affect how they go about their working day as well. I think if we were only to highlight the negatives, it would be doing a disservice to people with neurological conditions. That's a fun one. So to maybe put a spotlight on someone with dyslexia, for example, we live in a world now where there are some very, very high achievers with dyslexia who are very outspoken on the matter. Richard Branson, Oprah Winfrey, Orlando Bloom. I don't know if anyone's had the chance to follow Richard Branson on LinkedIn, but he's also running a series now where he talks very specifically about how he credits his dyslexia with making him as successful as he is. So if you haven't had a chance to catch up on that, I certainly would. What we want to do, though, is create an environment where by supporting somebody with a neurological condition, you are also creating an inclusive environment. And one of the key things that we have, and I really, really enjoyed Richard's ramp analogy, or was it Chris's ramp analogy? Richard's ramp analogy earlier on. And it's something that we build into TextHelp's brand, is that by providing assistive technology, you're providing a technology that might be essential for somebody, but beneficial for everybody. And if you keep that in the mindset when you're thinking about your workforce, yes, text-to-speech, screen masking, these softwares were primarily developed to assist a specific need. But I guarantee you, as you look at assistive technology as a whole, there will be benefits for every single member in your organization. And when we say creating that inclusive environment, what we want to do is make somebody feel like this. We want someone to feel like they're being treated with fairness and respect. We want them to be feeling valued and belonging to a group. We want them to feel safe to contribute openly and be empowered to contribute and achieve. And I think those bottom two parts are where we really have the most to be able to impact through assistive technology. We can help someone to feel safe to contribute openly by making sure that they have the right tools to be confident in how they want to contribute. And again, those right tools will allow someone to feel empowered, to grow, achieve, and really be able to do the same things their colleagues can do. So I want everyone to meet Anna. This is Anna. I feel the best way to talk about assistive technology is to make it real. So like most of us, it's been a real interesting year for Anna. Anna's now working from home. That was a shock, wasn't it? And probably moving forward, Anna will spend some time working from home. Anna has a really good employer, though, who made sure that the same reasonable adjustments that she had in the workplace have been given to her at home. Anna's struggling with a lot of things, like many of us, the stress of just this new environment, when she's picking the child up from school, how she's managing her work-life balance, and it looks like her mother or something's in the background there as she's trying to go about her work-life day. Anna's dealing with all the things that we're dealing with. Anna also has dyslexia. So on top of that, Anna no longer has that support system in the office where she would have had somebody beside her to proofread her emails for her, or she would have had that comfort of the office and that environment she grew up with. When we think about dyslexia for Anna, she's part of the 4% that it really affects her strongly. So Anna receives documents, and this is sometimes what they look like for her. And this is the effect that severe dyslexia can have on somebody. She's reading through this document, black text on a white background, and the words are jumping all over the place. Thankfully, because of assistive technology, Anna is now able to, as many people have mentioned here, use text-to-speech to listen to the document instead. Text-to-speech works something like this. You can come, you can select, you won't hear the audio here, but you'll see it working in action. And as it plays through the document in a real sounding voice, Anna's hearing that through her headset. There's a couple of really nice features here as well with text-to-speech, as you can see through the GIF going, that you can skip through paragraphs, you can skip back through paragraphs. You also have that visual reinforcement that Anna knows exactly in that document where she is through the text-to-speech, so she's still able to follow along. Text-to-speech is such an enabler yes, for people with dyslexia, but also as a productivity tool. And to give you a real life example of that, somebody with severe dyslexia like Anna would take approximately 3 minutes longer to understand an email than it would for a colleague who is reading the same email. Anna receives 30 emails a day. So that's 90 minutes of Anna's working day that is spent reading and trying to understand textual emails that her colleague doesn't have to spend. That's a full working day of her week if you equate it over the 5 days that she spends reading and understanding that her colleague doesn't have to do. So now, through text-to-speech, Anna is able to process that information much quicker. And then she might even use a software like dictation to then reply to that email or reply to that piece of content. To look at a quote from someone, read and write helps me to work at a faster rate. I can use text-to-speech instead of reading documents, which in turn allows me to work quickly as I'm a slow reader. People are able, if you're an audible learner, you can process information up to 10 times faster than you would when you were reading it. So text-to-speech is a massive, massive help. Richard also in his previous presentation mentioned color. Color is known to be a massive benefit or hindrance for people with dyslexia. Dependent on the color background, dependent on the color of the text, you may or may not be able to read it. So as was mentioned in the comments, I believe, functionality such as screen masking can be huge. I think we all remember back in the day, you used to have a colored filter over your computer. Well, thankfully we've made that digital, but you may also remember people walking around with tinted colored spectacles. They may suffer from dyslexia. They may even suffer from something called Mears-Irland syndrome. Screen masking, again, such a really simple but really powerful tool. You can tint the entire screen and make it much easier for you to read. Get rid of the confusion that you would suffer from having black text on a white background. Good assistive technology as well will also allow you to tailor this to your exact requirement. So with our assistive technology, you can select from one of the pre-selected colors, or you can actually type in your RGB code, which will tailor that screen to be the exact color that makes it easier for you to read. There are additional benefits through screen masking, such as reading rulers or reading windows. So for somebody, for example, with ADHD, they could have a reading window and then a strongly opaque screen mask that would block out a lot of the moving content on the screen, so they wouldn't become as easily distracted and be able to focus and read through the document that they were working on. For a real world scenario, screen masking is also just great for getting rid of glare from a computer screen. Now we're all working from home, we're staring at screens for potentially 8-9 hours a day. And removing that glare, putting that slight tint on the screen on a winter sun coming through the window can be highly beneficial to remove things like eye strain. So again, something that would be beneficial for all of your colleagues. Again, from screen masking, a real life situation. So when reading an Excel document, the text and numbers used to dance all over my screen. The moment that you added a screen masking feature through color theory and using the pink and blue tint overlays, the Excel spreadsheet almost ironed itself out. And I think that's a really, really great term there, ironed itself out. The content just suddenly became clear and this user could read it seamlessly, which I think is brilliant. We describe our assistive technology as a Swiss Army knife. There are a tremendous amount of features. I think one of our toolbars has 15. Unfortunately, in the 15 minutes I have here, I don't have time to demo all of them, but I will show one more. Submitting a report to your boss or sending an email to your boss, sending an email company-wide, sending a document externally. Somebody who suffers from dyslexia or neurological condition, this can be one of the most daunting things to do ever. And I think the image is something we all fear, the red ink coming back with spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, things just in the wrong place that we don't quite understand or that don't quite fit. What we want to do is improve the confidence of people, empower them, I think is a really good word. So one of the pieces of functionality our software has is a function called Check It. We spent 22 years developing Check It, and Check It is what's classed as an advanced spelling, grammar, and homophone checker. It goes beyond. It was built with a dyslexic brain. So while there are great spell checkers through Google and Microsoft that will pick up on spelling mistakes and some grammar mistakes, where Check It takes it that step further is Check It picks up on those words that are spelled correctly, but are just completely in the wrong place. But for someone with dyslexia, they might make sense. The there's, the for, the R's, all these words that even I sometimes commonly misspell when I'm typing there, particularly, I always get wrong. But what we do with Check It is we can pick up on those, correct those at source, and give that end user more confidence in sending that report, knowing that it will be correct. You'll see through the GIF that's on screen as well, that not only do we pick up on those errors, but we also make it much more of a learning experience with the check and immersive window. Going into the immersive window not only tells you that you've made a mistake, but it tells you why it's a mistake, and it tells you what you can do to correct it. So here saying it's a grammar error, telling you what statistics would show and allowing you to check it. Next one, spelling error. Not only are we giving you the correction, but we're giving you the dictionary definition so you can hear yourself in a sentence why that might be the right word to use. These are the assistive products that we have out there in the market available at the moment. I'm sure you guys will all be quite familiar with these, Reading, Writing, Claro. I want to finish with just one line. It was something that Chris said earlier, something I said a few presentations I've done. Chris mentioned the theory about thinking differently, and I think that's really important. The only one line I'd add to the second of that is I think we really need to start thinking differently about different thinking. So people that aren't the norm, and how we can help them and encourage them within the workplace. I've been Stuart. Those are my details on the screen. If you'd like to know more about Disability Confident while we're all here, we have some fantastic resources available. So if you go onto our website, we have a full building disability confidence in the workplace guide. It's a 50-page guide, and it really is tremendous. And we've also detailed text help story out there. We know that we're not perfect, and we're learning like every other organization's learning on this journey. But if you do have any questions, please do reach out.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's me.
You can see why these guys are doing so well. So, Stuart, I think you'll be hanging around to attend the Explore Information Processing workshop. Is that right?
I can hang around, yeah.
Yes, please. That'll be good. I think so. It's a useful. It'll be a useful workshop later on. I really liked that thing about please accept my resignation, which is one of the comments in your exam. Okay, so the next slot is reading solutions for paper. So we're going to see another exciting example of UK technology to support struggling readers. PJ Balderston is here today to demonstrate the reader pen and discuss the benefits of in the workplace for both employees and employers. The reader pen is an easy-to-use product that scans text and reads it aloud or via headphone. Scanning Pens, the company, is a young, vibrant, multinational company that recently won a Queen's Award for Export. So welcome, PJ. Have we got? Sorry,
I forgot to press the mute button. You will all find out that I'm not very tech savvy at all. So the organisers already know this. So I'm apologising in advance. Lucky what I'm showing today is only mid-tech. So I can handle that. So thanks very much, everyone, for having me. My name's PJ. And what I'm going to show you today, aren't we lucky to have all these things now that are going to help everyone? You know, when I went back and I think about at school, it wasn't even thought about dyslexia. And then you get all your behavioural issues from people that, you know, that are struggling, that have obviously been suffering, but it was never had a label back there. So, and that shaped their lives. So we are very lucky now to have all these wonderful, not only technology, assistive technology, but, you know, everyone's attitudes obviously is, you know, there's definitely a shift which everyone's working on, which is wonderful. So thanks for having us. We have a lot of examples of software that we've been seeing today, but today I'm going to actually show you some hardware. So working with computers is, we've got lots of wonderful things like what Stuart's just demonstrated, our text help, and then lots of, you know, mind mapping. We've got lots of wonderful things out there. But what happens when it comes to printed text? So we've got paper-based. As much as we'd like to think that it was not going to, you know, we are a paperless world, it's not there yet. And there's still lots and lots of text that we need access to. So what do we usually do? There's things out there that you can use. The most common thing would probably be to ask the person sitting next to you, or perhaps to have a human reader next to you. And in a workplace situation, that's probably not practical because that's just going to take up a lot more time of everyone's time. And it's, you know, it's not very good for people's confidence and independence. We want everyone to be able to get on with work no matter what resources that they need. So if they can have access to their own resources, then that's basically what we're trying to empower people to do. I really love that word that Stuart uses, empower, and that's what we're trying to do. I think that's everyone that's going to be in these sessions, we're trying to empower. So I'm going to quickly go over to my presentation for you. Here's the test with the technology. I did practice before, let's try. Let's see if this is going to work. Can we see that?
Yeah, we can't see the whole screen though.
Oops. Let me see if I can move that. I told you about technology. Okay. You're not able to see the whole screen.
We can
better
now. Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Better than it was. Can you minimize it?
Sure.
There we go.
Ooh, now I'm going through. Speeding through, aren't we? Is that better?
Better than it was.
I did warn you. Sorry, my apologies. Okay. Okay, so we're looking today at the solutions for paper text, and I'm PJ. I'm the business development manager in the commercial sector. So I'm the one working with workplaces. So anyone has any questions, I'm your contact. I've been with Scanning Pens since early 2017, so quite a while now. As mentioned in the introduction, thank you for the lovely introduction, Noel. We've recently, the company, I'll tell you a little bit about the company. We've been around since 2004, and we have offices. The head offices are based in the UK, so we've got one in Telford and then one in Bath. We've also got other international offices. So we've got other offices in Australia, USA, Canada and India. So we are worldwide, and one of the awards that we won was the Queen's Awards for International Trade. So we're very proud of that. Also, you know, celebrating neurodiversity awards, won that for 2000 for assistive technology for 2021 also. So primarily we were supplying schools, colleges and universities, and now we are branching out into workplaces to support people in workplaces, because as everyone knows, neurodiverse differences do not stop when you start work. So we're trying to actually provide solutions in the workplace. So hopefully most of the secondary schools now in the UK are using our pens. Therefore, it's going to be a natural progression when going into the workforce. It's going to be more common that you're going to see these pens being used. Excuse me. So what are they? They're a portable digital highlighter, and I'm going to give you a little demonstration shortly so you can see it in use. And what it does is it instantly reads a word paragraph or a text or a book, any text basically that is on paper, not handwriting, it's only printed text. That's a common question that we get. It is for printed text only. So I just wanted to throw that out there from the start. So it will read it out and it'll read it out aloud. It's battery operated. You don't have to carry around batteries with you. You just need to charge it up. There's a chargeable USB cord that comes with it, and you can just charge it up, and it's got about 8 hours of charge. So you can take that with you out on the field or in a study or learning environment, and you'll have plenty of charge to use that at least for a couple of days before needing to recharge it again. So who are these for? So basically, it's for anyone who struggles with reading, whether they're a reluctant reader or they've been diagnosed with dyslexia or one of the many other neurodiversity differences. It may be useful for partially sighted people if you're fully unable to see the line that you're scanning. It's probably not going to be the best solution for you. You do need to have the sight to be able to run over the text that you're trying to read. But it is really good for those, perhaps, maybe, I'll just use one example, maybe someone that's eyes are deteriorating slightly and it's a little bit blurry. They can run that over and they will get the audio rather than having to rely totally on the reading. It's also very beneficial for English as an additional language. I don't know whether I'm going to go through many of these statistics because I think over the few years that over the few seminars that we've been listening to, we've gone right into the statistics of how many people have have low literacy skills. But as mentioned before, I think it was Aidan that mentioned that there's a majority of not a majority, there is a lot of us out there that may have a neurodiversity when it comes to literacy. So it is quite common to actually have these people working with you if you don't suffer them with yourself. So I think it's really important that we empower everyone and make sure that we're closing that gap in the workplace to even out the playing field so that everyone's got a fair chance of being on equal or having equal opportunities as their colleagues. And that's going to improve their independence, obviously, and their confidence attached to reading. They don't have to be reliant on anyone. They're actually going to be independent and just get on with what they need to do on their own. So that's obviously going to make them inclusive. And it's a discrete tool also. So you'll see that when I show you in a moment that it is, it's pretty streamlined. It doesn't really stand out. There were earlier versions that kind of did. So it is nice and discreet. And you can pop earphones in, which I'll get to in a minute. And that helps the user use it discreetly as well. As mentioned before, it's portable, so you can just pop it in your pocket or wherever your toolbox, whatever it is, and you can use it. It doesn't have to rely on any screens or any Wi-Fi or software, so you don't have to have downloads for it or anything. It's a standalone unit. You just take it and it's ready to use. You turn it on and it can use it anywhere. So the printed text is available there for everybody. Okay, so as mentioned a moment ago, it has a jack that you can put your headphones in, so people can take their own earbuds. It is not a Bluetooth one, so you can't use Bluetooth earphones. It has to be a wired headset. So that is really, really important when it comes to the use of it. So we know that there is going to be a lot of people out there that may not want to stand out that they actually have a neurodiverse difference. They'd rather just get on with it maybe discreetly. So they can actually put the earphones in. If they have to listen to the same word 3 or 4 times, that's fine. They can do so without anyone listening. We find that if you have someone next to you, you're probably not going to ask them that many times. You're just probably just going to guess. Not talking about everybody, but there is a lot of people out there that probably wouldn't repeat that. But if they can listen to it themselves, that's fine. They can do so. On some of our pens, we've got dictionaries, so they can actually get the definition of the word as well. So if they're not comprehending it, they can actually get the definition of it, and that will be read out as well. So that's going to give them their independence, and confidence is going to increase because of that. It also has some of the models do have a voice recorder, so it may be better if someone has a does better with verbal instructions or recordings. then maybe the instructions for the day may be put onto pen so that they can listen to it kind of like a dictaphone. And it also has a scan to file, so it saves the text so that they can refer to any text that they want to. Maybe it's text that they need to refer to often, a list or something that they might need to look for, maybe for their daily tasks. Or they can then later on transfer it to a file onto the computer. It will plug into a computer and put it anywhere that has a flashing cursor. So that does help sometimes with maybe they're studying for a promotion, or maybe they're just doing some learning to help their further along their professional and personal growth. And we also have a workplace model. So when we come to storage, sometimes GDPR compliance is not supported when it has some of those features like the recorder and the saving of the text. So we do have a model that is that supports GDPR compliance. So they would be really good for institutions such as financial institutions, or perhaps anywhere that uses personal information, perhaps in the medical field, so a nurse or a firefighter, anywhere really where you're not allowed to store, or military, for example, anywhere that you're not allowed to actually store any of the text, you can use that. As mentioned before, it's mid-tech, so you just turn it on and use it. You just select the feature that you're wanting to scan over, and it will do that back for you. This is the range of pens that we've got. We've got quite a few different ones. They are different colours, most of them, just to show, just so you can easily determine what they are.
It's Noel here. So we've come to the end. Just
sure.
Quick, like I think this is a really, really useful looking device. I mean, I could see it being really useful for I don't know, for people like electricians or plumbers, faced with, you know, some detailed instructions. They're stuck in the dark, they can't read it. I mean, it looks, you know, it looks awesome for people on site, you know, in a load of different environments.
Definitely.
Now, can I just say, PJ is going to be attending the workshop Exploring Information Processing later, and that's with Liam Pettit from Matchware. So, I mean, please bring along some more information there as well.
Certainly, yes, I'll be there, and you can actually have a look. Sorry, I ran out of time to actually show you, but yeah, come along to that and I can show you a demonstration.
So we're in time for the next speaker. So thank you, PJ.
Thanks, Noel. Thank you very much.
So next, we're going to be looking at digital dictation systems in a report-based environment. So we've got Jamie English from Hands Free Computing. So for people who struggle to write, especially these on the move, our next speaker, Jamie, from Hands Free. So Jamie typically works with large companies and councils to find helpful solutions to support neurodiverse and disabled people. In addition to technological solutions, Hands Free Computing has a team of trainers and coaches to help people overcome the barriers which technology alone cannot. So, Jamie, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Noel. We are nearly at the first break, everyone, so don't worry, you'll be able to get your coffees soon. But a good thank you to all the speakers before me as well. It's nice to share sort of the worlds that we live in, of the world of assistive technology, and I know there's some cracking speakers coming up later as well. So I'm just going to share my screen, hopefully. Can you all see that now? Fantastic. So we'll be looking at digital dictation, mainly speech recognition technology. So a little bit more about us. As the name suggests, we are hands-free computing, and that's what we aim to do. We've been working in the industry since 1997, and primarily that started with the really early renditions of speech recognition, sort of when dictation would have to really go on a word by word basis, very slow. And that was more for the disability angle of people that had no other choice. Through to today, we've seen it evolve into a fantastic piece. The accuracy and the speed of speech recognition has just gotten better and better. And sort of over those years, we've worked with thousands of different organisations to support people in a variety of different capacities. It's really evolved from just mainly looking at disabilities and neurodiversities to a whole different range of solutions. So a little bit more about what speech recognition actually is, and mainly what I'll be covering today will be focused on it as a piece of assistive technology software to be loaded on people's computers and laptops, but there are many other angles for it. Its core concept is that it allows people to use their voice and really put their voices to work by speaking to their computers. So it reduces that traditional need for a keyboard and mouse. So within that, it allows for dictation, straight dictation. You can navigate around your computers through specific voice commands. You can add in industry-specific terminology, anything that helps it adapt to yourself. But the main thing around speech recognition is you really have to change the way that you think. I know it was when I started here, it was a real learning curve, because suddenly I was thinking as I'm typing a word to, you have to think a sentence or two ahead to be almost like a news reader, to really get the most from it and to get into the full swing of it. Where the technology has advanced, speech recognition has gotten a lot smarter as well. So we're in a time at the moment where just the level of technology that these pieces of tech can learn and they'll adapt to your voice over time. So it will learn the way you speak, the way you write, and it will adapt and make sure that it's as accurate as possible because it knows the way you speak. So for instance, with my sort of South Londonish accent, often at times when I started using it, when I'd say hands-free computing, it would come up with the number 3 computing. So it didn't take long, but with a few correction methods, it learnt the context of where I'm dictating so that mistake stopped happening. It knew how I was saying things. It knows how I say that particular word. So speech recognition is very similar to voice recognition, but they have sort of subtle differences between them. So the core concept behind speech recognition is it looks and tries to identify the words that are being said. Voice recognition tries to identify the speaker that's being said. So for instance, your Amazon Alexas or your Google Dots, they're voice recognition. So they'll try and identify who is speaking to them to activate that command. Whereas speech recognition, it will gradually learn your voice over time, but it's trying to break down the way you say words to be as accurate as possible and to be as quick as possible. Through both speech and voice recognition, we've seen sort of over recent years so many developments in this area. So as I mentioned, the Alexas and the Dots suddenly becoming more household items. You've got your Siri and your smart speakers on your actual phones now. Even in some cars are coming nowadays that you can speak and respond to texts all by voice. So it's a really exciting area to be in. And one of the best things about speech recognition is, especially when it comes to neurodiversities, is they can't make a spelling mistake. All they can do is mishear you. So much so. So two of the main players sort of within this market is a software called Dragon, and that's built from the ground up. They've built sorry about that. They've built their own speech recognition engine, as well as having lots of other features within them as well. And a newer one as well that we've seen recently is a software called Ditto, which utilizes the inbuilt Windows speech recognition and adds in features to sort of bring it up to the level that Dragon does, to really take it to dictation and beyond that as well. So a little look at who it's for. As I mentioned, in our sort of early times, we were primarily looking at disabled and neurodiverse individuals, from people with impairments that wouldn't allow them to use keyboards and mice. I know over the years I've worked with, through sort of the organisation, a few quadriplegic clients, and in some of their cases we've been able to reduce the amount of keyboard and mouse usage pretty much completely. They only need their support workers to physically press the on buttons on their monitor and device, and everything else they can do with their voice. So that's the level of, brings them an independence, but that's the level you can get up to just navigating around with your voice. But so much so where the software has developed and the technology is advanced, the speed and the accuracy have come a long way too. And that really opened up sort of the possibilities of whom speech recognition can benefit. So we work with a lot of organizations within a productivity angle as well. So the one thing I'm sure we're all short of is time, especially within a working day. So we do a lot with GP practices, surgeries, doctors, medical personnel, to try and save their administration time, to keep them doing what they do best, seeing patients. They don't want to then spend another 20, 30 minutes typing up their notes, writing referral letters. So reducing that time is fantastic for them. And we see a lot in the software that's out at the moment. They'll bring out specific medical versions that have medical lexicons within them. And speech recognition love that. The more technical and difficult a word is, the more accurate it will be, because there aren't any other words that sound similar to it. So it's highly accurate in these environments. And the same goes with sort of the solicitors and lawyers from a legal standpoint as well. And I know Stuart mentioned from Text Help a moment ago that it's looking at the difficulties of neurodiversities, but the strengths as well. For instance, we work with a lot of emergency services, whether it be sort of police or firemen, and within their roles, they excel in that frontline service that they provide, but they can often struggle with that reporting afterwards, typing up reports, incident reports, what's happened, which can really hold them back. So by giving them something that allows them to play to their strengths, because they're very good communicators, they're very good speakers, it can really elevate them within their roles. But the core crux of it is it really can benefit anyone who has to do any form of typing, manual computer work, to a degree where it can dictate anything you want. But at the same time, there is a level of, if just clicking a key on the keyboard or a quick click on the mouse is quicker, then we'll tell you that. So a little bit more around the particular benefits of it. So within dictation, you can dictate at around 160 words per minute, which is far faster than most people can type, unless you're incredibly talented. A lot of the engines at the moment, they're optimized for use within office environments, so that sort of ambient noise level doesn't play into just how accurate they can be. You can create particular forms or templates within working environments. So if you're going through a set field within someone's job role, you can literally just say next field, the date, next field, and skip through much quicker than using the traditional keyboard and mouse. A little bit more about the learning side of things, so the adaptation. So when you first load these onto someone's device, you have options to allow them to review sort of your existing documents or emails that you sent recently, so that they can learn the way you write, the way you type, the way you speak. So it gradually learns the context of how you're trying to phrase things. Again, it just plays into that accuracy angle. They often have deep learning technology as well, which ties back to artificial intelligence, which is a little bit scary in some regard, but they do learn from as soon as you correct them, they learn from their mistakes. As I mentioned with the hands-free 3 issue. It learnt from that and it knows not to do it again. And you can also add in the specific words or phrases that are specific to you. So for instance, I can say HFC and a speech recognition will pop up hands-free computing limited. So that's just a basic example, but it allows you that level of customization to be specific and as beneficial to the individual who's using it. So a little bit more around navigation. So again, you can save that sort of continual clicking of, oh, save to October 2021 reports in a phrase instead of going through finding all these file paths to get there. All can be done with your voice in as long or as short a phrase as you want. It can automate workflows and processes. So where I mentioned about GPs, we do a lot around them. So they'll often be dictating whilst they're in with a patient now, the ones we work with. So it's going on. And as soon as they leave, they can say, open referral template. And it would open up almost as I mentioned a moment ago, specific template. And then they can just navigate through the particular fields where they need to input the information. So that lengthy process of having to wait until the patient's left to then type up, trying to remember, then finding the referral template and typing that up, it really reduces it. And as I mentioned with our sort of quadriplegic clients, you can automate around 99% of PC usage. Another feature that usually comes within them is transcription. So whilst you're away from your computer, whether it's on a mobile or a digital recorder, you can take recordings whilst you're away. And then when you come back to these particular pieces of software, run them through a transcription module, and all of your audio recording is then transcribed up in minutes rather than having to go back and review and type it up. So it really can save time in that regard.
Jamie, so can you hear me?
Yep, yep.
Thank you. And I especially love that last one. So being able to, I guess, if you're in the services and you're out and about and you want to bring back your report and have it typed up for you in seconds, wow, that's great. That was really, really useful. Thank you. So we can see how this has lots of implications in the workplace, particularly for people who are out and about and then coming back in, and especially if they're dyslexic or they just want productivity improvements. That's really useful. So thanking Jamie for that. Just summarize, so the last 3 sets of solutions, we have a PC-based solution for dyslexia, a paper-based solution, and a writing-based solution. And, you know, these are obviously all really useful in particular contexts in the workplace. We'll have a break now. I think you might have missed earlier. I was told that I went silent while I was speaking briefly about BATA. So, you know, this conference is coming to you from BATA, the British Assistive Technology Association. So that's just a friendly reminder of who our sponsors are. So we'll see you all in 15 minutes. That's 10:55, okay? Got some more exciting stuff then. Take care. Okay, so welcome back. Welcome back to the BATA Making Your Organization Disability Confident. So during the break, I think Lisa uploaded a couple of documents. So one is a white paper from Access to Work, and the second relates to the BATA Guide to Web Accessibility for Public Bodies. These 2 documents are both quite important. So we're back now to neurodiversity part 2, supporting people to focus, collaborate, and manage sensory support in the workplace. Am I being heard?
Loud and clear, no.
Pardon?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. So our next speaker is from Matchware, Liam Pettit. So I think almost everyone in the industry knows Liam. Liam works for Matchware, creators of MindView, the mind mapping software. Since 1998, MindView has helped over 5 million users turn ideas into reality with their mind mapping software. So welcome to Liam.
Thanks, Noel. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you for inviting us to talk. I'm following a brilliant lineup. So there's some pretty amazing acts to follow. So thank you guys. And it's also amazing to see so many colleagues, friends, partners on the line. Just to plug BATA, we are a founding member of BATA as well at Matchware, and it's an invaluable network for us to collaborate with other assistive technology providers to enhance our offering and to innovate even further within the space. Yes, so we produce MindView, and in the world of workplace adjustments or adjustments in general, we're probably best known as a mind mapping software. So also conscious that Chris, you were on the line earlier, and I have to defer to a lot of your expertise when it comes to mind mapping. But I think actually MindView is better described as a reading and writing software, even project management software that benefits from mind mapping. It's not just a mind mapping tool, but it does benefit from being able to visualize thoughts and ideas in a kind of more organic fashion, to organize those thoughts and to produce formatted documents from those ideas, which are obviously great for assessment in the academic setting or for producing any type of report writing, presentations in the workplace. So what I'm going to do here is have a little bit of a preamble, just going through some information on a few slides, and then I'm going to go into actually demonstrating MindView in more detail. So let's see who can share. Everyone see my screen? Thumbs up. Excellent. Thanks, Noel. All right, so we are a Danish software house. We have an office here in London. We're also in France, Germany, and in the US. And we get this question a lot of why you'd want to have mind mapping as part of your assistive technology toolkit. It's actually a good question for assistive technology in general. I think what's exciting about this space is the innovation of assistive technology, as a lot of people have already said today, benefits not just those individuals with a specific need, but to anyone who might find these strategies as a way of supporting them with their work. So we see a huge amount of productivity benefits, especially when you apply mind mapping with technology. One of the core themes is that it reduces the need to repeat yourself. Essentially, the constant repetition of the same information from format to format without any barriers presented by neurodiversity can waste a lot of time. So productivity is a big thing that we'll talk about today. Assistive features in the tool, I absolutely love reading ramps. From Richard earlier. I'm going to be definitely stealing that, Richard. Let me know if there's a royalty fee I have to pay on that. But reading ramps, writing ramps, all of those assistive features that allow users to personalize the way that they work within technology. So yeah, of course, those elements of customizing not only the text, but the image of the mind map using visual cues, colors, images as a way of helping to recall information more effectively, personalize that information, make it more accessible to you, is one of the really critical strategies around mind mapping. And I'm sure we'll hear more about this later on as well. But for an organization, it also helps your accessibility compliance in a big way. Your strategies to make your workplace more accessible are enhanced through using not only assistive technology, but mind mapping. If you don't have a mind mapping tool as part of your toolkit, then I certainly recommend going out and doing some research. And in good old BBC terminology, other mind mapping softwares are available. Of course, I'll be showing MindView today, but please do go do some research on mind mapping tools. Now, just a kind of high level overview of what benefits you'd expect to see. We talk about that productivity, and we'll come on to that in more detail when I show you the tool. But one of the qualities of mind mapping, again, I defer to the experience of others when it comes to learning this information, but mind mapping has this wonderful quality of appealing both to the left and right brain thinker. So whether or not you're that person who likes to be a scatter, information all over the place, organic, random thinker, or a more sequential, top-down linear thinker, when you see that hierarchical structure of a mind map presented, both those thinkers can access that information, digest it, and process that information. That's why it's been such a go-to strategy for any type of collaborative work, brainstorming, project planning, whatever it might be. But that again helps the tool, the mind mapping tool that you deploy, become something that's more than just a tool for those individuals with a specific need, because it appeals to such a broad spectrum of individuals. It's a real benefit. There's loads of papers that point towards an improved memory recall. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on that because I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. We're going to talk about organization, but I want to really kind of focus on this element of stress and anxiety, be it in the workplace or in the academic context. When faced with a large assignment, a large project, there is that natural instinct to firstly panic. You know, the sheer scale of the challenge that is in front of you, it can be hard to see how you're going to get to the other end of that. And a lot of the time when Mind View is recommended, it's recommended as a tool to get started, break the ice, you know, overcome the barrier of the blank page syndrome of writer's block, start with a word, get some momentum and get some confidence and get moving. Plus, when you've got large complex plans broken out into smaller, more manageable parts, that feels like you can overcome any challenges, but also it helps to shrink the problem. Quite often when we leave problems in our mind, they multiply in your imagination. When you kind of see that visual plan in front of you, it helps to see the big picture. And seeing the big picture is a really beneficial way of helping to get over some of that stress and anxiety that you might be facing. Now, as a software house, we put accessibility at the heart of what we do, which is amazing because we get some really innovation out of our tool. And we defer again, in this example, to an organization called the Digital Accessibility Center. If you're not familiar with them, they are an awesome outfit of individuals, web analysts, all of which have a disability of their own. So when they're testing our software, it really gets tested by individuals with a specific need or knowledge of assistive technology. And it's all tested in line with the WCAG guidelines. But as a result of that, MindView actually works out of the box with every other technical adjustment that you might be recommending. So that's amazing because as part of a coherent strategy of assistive technology, you're not just getting a mind mapping software on its own, or text to speech, speech to text, or visual impairment software on their own. It's normally a suite of tools that you use to support an individual. So with MindView, it works with things like Dragon. As Jamie was demonstrating earlier, not only is that dictation, but that's also accessing the functionality of the tool, using your voice to access the software without the need of a mouse or a keyboard. For visual impairments, JAWS, Zoom Text, Supernova, they all work out of the box, which is terrific. I get challenged a few times as to why individuals with visual impairments might benefit from mind mapping software, which is a visual planning software. Well, as we were learning yesterday, through the talks from yesterday about visual impairment, most individuals acquired their visual impairment or blindness. So still process and think about information in that kind of chunked visual methodology, and also some other things which we'll look at in a moment. But if you're using any type of screen readers, Claro, Text Help, it will also read the mind map aloud to you, which is great. So we've put a lot of thought and energy into thinking about making sure it's accessible, alt tagging our images. Richard, again, just to kind of cite you there, what's amazing is when we export from our mind map into a Word document, which is always the wide-eye moment, it automatically makes those header styles. It automatically makes the documents accessible. So some of those things that can take a lot of time if you don't know how to do a headering and style scheme are handled automatically from your plan, which is fantastic. But just so that we're on the same page, I'm conscious of time here, just use the same terminology. It's essentially a structure of information. We often refer to it as a radial, hierarchical design. Some of the language we use are a root in the middle of the mind map with main branches, sub branches. If you're over in the US, you might hear things like parent branches, child branches. But it's obviously a great visual way of being able to define large ideas and their smaller components within those ideas. Okay. I'm just going to zip through some of these. When we're looking at applying it as a result of an adjustment or supporting individuals with need, Mary Coley made this amazing Venn diagram of the makeup of neurodiversity. If you haven't seen this before, it helps also to highlight that individuals with dyslexia aren't exclusively seeing some of the barriers presented by dyslexia. There may be some overlap with some other areas of neurodiversity. And what we've done with this is, with the kind of blue text, is just to highlight a little bit about how mind mapping with MindView can help with improving your focus, focusing on one branch at a time, or getting ideas onto the page, all those good things. But I'll share this with you so you can have a look at this in a bit more detail yourself. But really what I'm going to focus on in the very short demonstration I give of MindView is the ability to go from a blank page, dump ideas, and convert those into documents that you would need for the workplace without having to repeat all that information again and again and again from scratch. So it really is that productivity tool that we're looking at. But it is across all businesses. And I think that's what's exciting about this as well. These organizations here are the ones who actually promote MindView as an inclusive mind mapping strategy. So not just for workplace adjustments, but for anyone who wants to promote themselves to get access to the tool. And we've also got lots of academic functionality. I know there's some universities on the line here, like got built-in citation tools, academic styles. There's about 10,000 referencing styles you can choose from when writing your academic papers with MindView, which is a very powerful feature. Anyway, so I'm just going to quickly put my money where my mouth is here with the last a couple minutes. So one of the inclusive designs of MindView is that it's designed to look identical to Microsoft Office. What's awesome about this is that in the workplace, it doesn't stand out as a tool that's been given to someone as an adjustment. And it actually makes it very appealing just to anyone who wants to create mind maps. There's loads of different ways you can get ideas onto the page. I'm just double clicking with my mouse here, and then you can drag and drop, connect things together. The whole tool is accessible through keyboard-only shortcuts as well. So you can use those keyboard shortcuts just to branch out ideas and then bring things into this kind of nice coherent plan of a mind map. Now, we spoke about chunking. We spoke about breaking down the concepts of individual sections. But one of the things we also put a lot of emphasis on is sequencing information. Individuals who are kind of like those organic thinkers struggle to sequence things in a top-down format, which is why when it comes to report writing or doing any type of written work, plowing straight into a Word document is probably the worst strategy to go down. So with the mind map, we always read the mind map in a clockwise fashion, which again, it helps us to reorder, resequence things, move things around until said point when we're ready to create those documents. Far easier to move things around here than it is in that 50-page request for proposal document that's being written. You need to add a bit more content. Anyway, long story short, we end up with this mind map here. It's an example of an agenda. On the branches, I've had loads of content like text notes, a bit like having your word processor built into your mind map. Again, just taking one branch at a time, add documents, whatever, until said point, you're ready to produce something for your stakeholders, for assessment, whatever it is you're doing. And let me just quickly show this export.
What a pro. Almost, yeah, he's there on time. So I love this concept of mind mapping. For someone who's a visualizer with a cluttered mind, this brings order. While this is coming up, Liam will be hosting the workshop Exploring Information Processing later. So we'll be able to see more of perhaps some of these tools then as well.
Yes, we will, yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Liam.
Pleasure, thank you.
It's absolutely wonderful. So our next speaker now is from Open Genius, and they'll be showing a product called Iowa. So Kate is a colleague of Chris Griffiths, who is the second speaker today, and she's a partnership executive at Open Genius. Open Genius, as I said, are the creators of Iowa. Iowa is an inclusive, all-in-one mind mapping, whiteboard and collaboration app. So you're welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Hang on, I'll just share my screen. So thank you so much for inviting Iowa to be part of this. Just an confession, I was not the original presenter today, and I am not a public speaker. So I apologize for me falling over my words. This is definitely not my forte, but I'll try my best not to waffle and keep within those 10 minutes. I'm also conscious that Liam has covered actually a lot of what I've got down here from my notes from Ross. So I'll try and avoid, too much repetition as well. But AOA, at the core of it, originally a mind mapping tool, but over time we've realized, it's so much more than that. To us, encouraging and empowering neurodiverse individuals isn't about giving them software where they exist in a bubble. That's no good to anyone. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap between neurodiverse individuals so they feel empowered to work in a way that suits them, but also be able to collaborate with their peers and colleagues in the same workspace. A lot of that has been through mind mapping, which, as Liam said, has been used within the assistive tech sector for a long time, because we know how powerful mind maps are to those with neurodifferences, because of the way you can break down information, because it's colorful, and because it avoids working in a linear fashion. So AOA is definitely about helping that, communicating those ideas and problem solving and those unique perspectives that neurodiverse individuals can contribute to their organizations, but may not always be empowered to do so in traditional methods. So I'm going to take a little look at our mind maps here. So AOA is a cloud-based software tool. So you can see that we've got several people in here, and we can all collaborate at the same time. We've got a couple of different views to choose from. So the feedback that I've had from speaking to needs assessors is that this view works really well because of the way that the text is contained within these boxes. But if you've got individuals who have maybe been introduced to mind mapping, the traditional hand-drawn way, we've got an organic view as well. And we've got a radial view. And this is great if you're easily distracted. For example, if you've got ADHD and you just want to focus on certain sections, then you can zoom in this way. So you've got multiple different ways of working that you can adapt to at any point. We've been working towards making AOA as inclusive as possible, and we've added a couple of new different styles, including Dyslexia View. And this adds a nice sort of creamy yellow background, which makes it easier to read and gives the text boxes see-through backgrounds, as long as you haven't already styled them, and makes the text a bit bigger as well. And if you find that that background color isn't quite right for you, because different people find different colors work better for them, you can swap them out. So how is AOA and mind mapping useful in the workspace? So you may notice that, unlike Liam, I am not on video right now. And the main reason for that is because I am here stimming, playing with a little bit of blue tack, because speaking and being on video makes me super anxious. And the problem with having Zoom and video meetings, they're great if you are confident at speaking, if you're confident at knowing when to jump into the conversation and contribute your idea. But if you're not, it's very, very easy to be drowned out and lose the opportunity to share your ideas. And that doesn't mean they're not valuable. So mind mapping is a great way of facilitating those meetings in a different way that makes individuals comfortable and confident to contribute their ideas. We've added a few different features to make that easier. So for example, we've got this mode called Brainstorm Solo Mode. And the idea behind that is that you can have a meeting, almost like a breakout session like you have in Zoom, where everyone else in the meeting can't see what everyone else is contributing. And then when you turn it off, you can see everyone's ideas. Everyone's had the same opportunity to add ideas without being intimidated by what other people are doing. So mind mapping can be great for allowing that level playing field where everyone has the opportunity to communicate and add their voice. And then finally, in the top hand corner here, we've got an additional really useful tool. So if you're not quite confident where to put your ideas, you can use this thing called the idea bank. Pop it in there. You can keep those ideas to yourself or share them with everyone else. And then when you're ready, just drag and drop it onto the mind map. Like Liam was showing, mind maps can also be great for breaking down pieces of writing like reports into easier key sections, and then you can export them later as a Word document and build upon that. So for us, we're kind of already aware that creativity isn't really the issue for a neurodiverse individual. It's sometimes actioning those ideas. It's the time management, it's the memory, it's the organization. So within AOA, we have an additional option within your mind map to create tasks from your branches. So an additional view we have is the Taskboard View. And without even leaving your mind map, you can start adding tasks to those task boards. So for example, newsletters, I can click on this button and I can add it to an existing task board that I have. And without even leaving this mind map, I can already start adding information, which is going to make it a lot easier to actually action this. And because it's collaborative, it means that you can work with other individuals who are maybe better at time management and can support you in actioning and fulfilling these ideas. If I move to the Taskboard view, so if you struggle with maybe traditional task boards, maybe they're a bit too linear, they're a bit too intimidating, the Canvas view is a really nice alternative to that. It gives you a bird's eye view and it's really nice and colorful. And we've just introduced a new theme so that you can add that background color as well, so that the white background isn't as overwhelming. You can see at a glance when things are due, and it's really easy to reschedule things. But we've got multiple views for the Taskboard view. So if you've got someone who is maybe used to working in more traditional taskbar Kanban style, we've got this style as well. And this is great for getting a visual of particular workflows. So you can drag them between the different columns and get a good idea of what needs to be done and when. We also have a Gantt timeline, which is great for getting a visual representation of when your tasks are actually due and stop you from overwhelming yourself by having too many things due at the same time. Which is great for task management. And I'm slightly conscious of time. How am I doing? Have I still got a few minutes to go?
Minutes, oops. Yeah, you've got a couple of minutes, Kate, sorry.
Brilliant, okay. So if I head back to the workflow view, you can assign tasks to different people, which makes accountability so much more easy. So if you're working in a big group of people, you can see at a glance, what you're working on and what you need to work on. And you can use filters to filter out what everyone else is doing, so you can just focus on your own tasks, which for someone who becomes easily overwhelmed, and I am one of those people, be really, really useful for cutting out that noise. And finally, we have a whiteboard view. So anyone who maybe is finding the mind maps too constrictive, but they're not quite at the point of actioning ideas, then whiteboards work really nicely for organizing either events or mood boards, design boards, or just dumping a load of information and that they're not quite sure what to do with yet. But the key thread throughout all of AOA is allowing people to work together in a way that suits them, which is so important when you say that you are encouraging neurodiversity. And I think that's the key takeaway. It's not about putting neurodiverse people in a bubble with software that they can only work in but can't share out of. This is about bridging that gap and making sure that those ideas are heard and supported. Okay, I hope that sort of made sense. I do apologize for the sheer panic in my voice. I am not a public speaker at all.
Thank you, Kate. You absolutely understate your ability to speak. You're fantastic. Chris used the expression earlier, metacognition, which I really liked in terms of that whole collaboration around ideas. And I can see how Iowa can be really helpful with that. And the other big takeaway that I had from what you showed is some of the people with neurodiverse issues perhaps struggle to move from concept to action. And that little feature around action, I think will help people, for example, with ADHD to externalize some of their time goals and so on. So really like that. So thank you, Kate.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
We're running a minute or two ahead of schedule, and our next, but we're always grateful to grab some time back. Our next speaker is Conor Ward. Conor is an autistic speaker and consultant and Brain in Hand user experience specialist. Brain in Hand is a digital self-management support system for people who need help remembering things, making decisions, planning, or managing anxiety. It's often used by people who are autistic or who have learning difficulties or who are managing mental health challenges. It combines human support and digital self-management technology. So welcome to Conor Ward.
Thank you very much for having me. I am also joined by my colleague, Dawn Makinson. And let's just get these slides up and so we can, well, you've already introduced myself there. I've not got too much more to add, but I'll allow Dawn to introduce herself too.
Hello, thank you, Conor. Yes, I'm Dawn Makinson. I'm a Senior Engagement Manager at Brain in Hand, and I'm also work part-time as a specialist mentor, supporting autistic people in the work and education.
Cool, well, thank you. And Dawn, if you want to just start us off by giving a bit more of an idea of what Brain in Hand is, please.
Yes, thank you. So thank you, Noel, for our introductions. As you said, it is for people who may have some struggles sometimes with executive function, or a mental health condition, or memory. And Brain in Hand isn't condition specific. It's more about enabling anyone who has particular difficulties in the areas that I've just mentioned. And what's really unique about Brain in Hand is that it combines a blend of that self-management and human support, and the technology side as well. So with regards to the human support, we do have specialists who are practitioners in their own right that will work with our users on a regular basis to enable somebody to personalise their Brain in Hand, help it evolve as that person evolves or their situation changes. And it helps to empower people and to do things for themselves and to build on their independence.
Well, I am one of those users who's had the journey done to me myself, and yeah, as an autistic individual who has challenges in some of those areas, it really does show. So I'm going to frame things within the autistic context, just because that's my biggest area of expertise. But of course, many of these differences are experienced by other neurodivergent individuals. We're going to be focusing on sensory processing today, which is one of the big three in the autism space anyway. So I'm not going to spend my time explaining the sensory system too much to you, because I'd like to think we've all been taught those first 5 senses at least from a very young age. We are always taught 5 senses. I don't know why balance was never included, and we were taught 6 senses. So balance, I don't really need to explain, but I can be more forgiving about people not knowing about the last 2, interoception and proprioception. Interoception is the understanding of what's going on inside your body, whether what your organs inside of you are trying to tell you. Am I too hungry? Do I need the toilet? Your brain's an organ itself. What's the actual stuff going on there? What am I trying to understand? And then we also have proprioception. Where is my body in relation to itself? Where is my arm and stuff? There's really effects like walking and down to water bottles. How much pressure do I apply to ensure that I'm going to actually pick up this water bottle and not squeeze it too hard, or not squeeze it hard enough so it flies off? All of these are sensory systems. We all have a sensory system and we all have to manage it, just as neurodivergent people specifically have to put in a bit more work. So some of us can be hypersensitive to certain senses. I'm particularly very oversensitive to certain smells, certain visuals. And oppositely, people can be hyposensitive, meaning that there is a need for inputs there. And with these different individual needs, it means that in an environment that is ever changing, we have to partake in behaviors that either help us avoid certain senses or seek certain senses to build up that regulation, because we all have to regulate it. And I don't think enough attention is given to the fact that we all spend so much time regulating our sensory system. If a light's shining through a window, the sun's really bright, what do? You close a blind, because that's too much sense for you. But for autistic people specifically, there's quite a lot to notice, therefore there's quite a lot to manage and stay on top of. So these sensitivities aren't as straightforward as, oh, I can do sound in every scenario. No, I love going to concerts and theatre, but if I walk into a supermarket, I really struggle. And that's because there's different layering of sounds that exist in those contexts. It's important to realise that each sense doesn't just sense the straightforward thing. Touch is the easy example there. It's obviously about physical touch, but it's also about temperature. And particularly in neurodivergent brains and autistic brains specifically, making sense of all this sensory input that you're constantly being bombarded with is really quite hard. And to filter it down and work out what each sense is actually trying to tell you, which is the relevant one, which one can you block out and completely avoid, it means that regulation is almost a full-time job in itself to try and get on top of. So, of course, having to stay on top of these things means that there's quite a variety of things that can be done to help stay on top of it, whether it's sunglasses, the noise cancelling headphones. I normally just have to go through my own body. So that's a stim toy for me, a fidget toy, my ring even. There's many everyday items that people can use to help regulate their own system. There's also a big series of everyday behaviors that people can do. We may see neurodivergent people avoiding things like handshakes or hugs. I have a particular aversion to light touch. So if somebody has quite a weak handshake, it doesn't feel like a single point of touch for me. It feels like a very variable touch. Like you can feel the on-offness of it as much. It's really hard to quite explain. You'll also find things like, I don't have labels in my clothes, and there's loads of hacks as such to try and get on top of it. So people will partake in many of these behaviors. A lot of them aren't seen as socially acceptable. We of course need to challenge that idea, because who is it to say what is anyone's idea of socially acceptable? People need to do what they need to do to regulate themselves. As long as it's not harming anyone else around them, then we need to work out how to do that. Of course, some behaviors can be quite harmful to an individual, but these are ones that can be more on an extreme level and are exhibited more when distressed behavior is also factored into it. So if we look at it in the context of a workplace, what I've done here is normally if I do any kind of in-person event, I will have time to examine the environment that we are currently in. So because of course we're doing this virtually, and it would be weird for me to analyze my own house because you can't see all the way around it. I've taken an example of an average office environment. I've only been in a few myself because they tend to be very overwhelming. So I just go through a few of these to give you an idea of what could be potentially sensory triggering things in the common workplace. Of course, it's important to point out that these will differ per type of workplace. This is just an office that I've built up. But of course, each person interprets things in different ways. But particular triggers, definitely for me, we're office lights, very bright most of the time. There's this conception that, oh, some people like to have the radio on so they can concentrate and stuff. The general background nattering, etc. Uniforms a point of contention. It's something that really hindered me in the process of finding work at a young age. We have things down to even having wobbly chairs. That's something that somebody who has balance challenges in regulating that. I have quite bad balance challenges. I can't stand up on a bus or on a tube or anything like that. So to have that, all of these things, if they are out of a person's control to be able to regulate, then it leads to them having a lack of focus, a lack of concentration, because they are having to spend so much of their mental energy to try and make sense of all this information. So in a shared environment, it's always easier to add personal sensory input than to get rid of it. What I mean by this, if people really like concentrating with sound on, then they stick their headphones in, etc. It's things like that. There's always going to be compromises on though, because what if there's a load of sensory differences in a neurodiverse workforce with temperature, and someone has to have the air conditioning on, but then that air conditioning starts making a noise that triggers somebody else? There's always going to be compromise. So what can we do to have a look at what a certain person can do? Well, that's when it comes to brain and hand. People need knowledge to understand their sensory systems. We're not taught that from a young age. And as part of Brain and Hand, we have the opportunity to teach that, and I'll allow Dawn to expand on that.
Thank you. So part of the human support then is that specialists, approved specialists, will work with the users around their particular strengths and their particular needs, and help develop that self-awareness, and breaking down situations into smaller chunks, as previous people have been talking about, to sort of really work out what is happening in their sensory world. And the idea of this is to do with not making any assumptions about anybody, albeit a diagnosis or how somebody's feeling that particular day. So with the work of the specialist, the user will build up a picture of what they know works well, what could be a trigger, so that empowers them to think about that when they're in the work environment, because it's really important that we enable somebody within the workplace to have that meaningful two-way interaction with their colleagues.
So that very much encapsulates the knowledge side of stuff, because people having a knowledge and understanding and the ability to identify their sensory system, it is of course a brilliant skill, but of course technology, we find, assists in that for being a safety net. So I've taken a few examples from my own Brain and Hand. I have a library in there of helpful things that I can navigate. We have them structured in something called problems and solutions. So I have this thing that I can pull up sensory stuff. It's very much in my own language. That's the whole point of personalization. Everything is in my own language. We're not trying to tell anybody how they should be talking about themselves. My probably the five most common sensory related things I have, you can see there on the left. Onions cover two of them. You'd be surprised how much of my life is disabled by onions. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but if I was in an office and the office was open plan, and you had a kitchen that was open plan and somebody was microwaving onions or cooking onions, then I've shot it. I've lost all, I probably pushed my sensory imbalance so much so that I'm in overload, which isn't productive for me, it isn't productive for anybody. So it's about nipping it in the bud before it can get to that point. And because it's in a user's own language, it's so much more easy to understand and navigate in those moments of stress, in heightened anxiety, because there's nothing harder than trying to work out what somebody else is trying to make you mean, trying to interpret your own body and mind. Then yeah, so to have it in your own language and have it so at the touch of your fingertips, wherever you are on your phone, makes a world of difference. And if I had a little bit more time, I'd give you an example of last week on the bus, that it saved me from a rather messy scenario. Not messy as in like messy, by the way. It was to do with hand sanitizer. But why we should get it right, I'll hand this to Dawn again.
Thank you. So, you know, we are putting an individual at the centre of everything that we do, and we should be doing that. And it's thinking about, like I said before, not making assumptions about what somebody needs and what their differences are and what their strengths are. It's about listening to the person, and it's all around well-being as well. So if we think about somebody who might be struggling in the workplace, is it because they can't do the work, or is it because their sensory differences are actually impacting on their ability to focus or concentrate? And there's a lot of research out there, you know, that are saying that people do become quite ill quite often because they're masking an awful lot, which again takes up so much energy in their day. And you know, I've worked with individuals in the workplace that says it's like the two different people, and when they go into work, the one person that they think people want to see, so it's like what they want people to know about them. And when they go home, they can be themselves. So it's about working together, employees and employers together, to sort of make that environment conducive for individuals.
Cool. Well, thank you, Dawn. And to summarise, we all need to look after our sensory systems. Whether you're neurodivergent or neurotypical, we are a neurodiverse population, but all of us have our own sensory needs, and we don't give them enough attention. To just summarise it in the autistic context, in the neurodivergent context, if you get the sensory processing bit right, it allows you to look at the other areas. That allows you to then work on the social communication interaction, allowing that person to rely on their certainties and consistencies. All of these things avoid spiraling mental health problems in this context. And technology is just a brilliant way to assist that. And it's made a world of difference to me. I wouldn't be as independent as I am without technology, and even Brain Hand has been a massive part of that. So I think that rounds us up nicely on time. So thank you very much. And
well done, guys.
Thank you from me, thank you from Dawn.
Thank you very much, Conor and Dawn. It was very insightful. There's a workshop coming up shortly on sensory sensitivity for neurodiverse colleagues. Are one of you guys going to be attending that? It's being run by Pooh.
I'm in another speaking engagement, unfortunately, but I wish I could.
But if you are, Brain in Hand might be part of that conversation, and I'm sure people would welcome it.
Well, thank you very much.
So sensory support is a nice segue to our next session, which is on mental health. Supporting people in the workplace towards better mental health. So we're delighted to have Professor Derek Peters. Derek is an interdisciplinary researcher and educator across the disciplines of sport, health, and exercise science. He's had an extraordinary 30-year academic career punctuated with scientific studies, fellowship, and awards. It's not all been plain sailing for Derek. He has also experienced significant mental health challenges throughout his education, work, and private life. Derek is the inspiration of AM8, which you will see in the follow-up session. Welcome, Derek.
Hello, folks. Can I just check you can see my PowerPoint screen?
Yes.
Yes, that's there. Wonderful. Right, very quick introduction. I'm just about a world leader at being me, and sometimes I'm not quite sure I get that right. I find myself neurodiversitively fluid, using today's technological terming, based on the context. And as Nola said, I've suffered and lived with acute and chronic mental health conditions that have led me to be an interested academic whose role and job, and if you like, my super strength, is knowledge translation and problem solving. So I'd like to talk you through some of the issues around having a mentally healthy workplace, and I'm here representing Amate Limited, who we'll be talking about later. So the session outline, very quickly, we'll look at a logic model for improving mental health in the workplace that's been recently developed by a regional consortium of researchers, employers and mental health specialists. We'll then look at the work-related risk factors for mental health conditions that have come through academic research in predominantly normal populations, so those not exhibiting diagnosed mental health conditions, where we can look to see where we've got the basic structure of workplace factors that can result in either emergence of mental health conditions or exacerbation in particular mental health conditions. We'll see from that, and it's something that's come across quite clearly this morning, about the individualization challenge in terms of a mental health condition and a categorization is a box. We're all against boxes, we're all against profiling. In actual fact, I think there are potentially two profiles that represent myself. I'm a human and I'm an individual. I don't really worry about the boxes in between because none of them can make me in the same box. Mental health in the workplace. We'll also look then at the M health potential that we may be able to use to create this individualization to help individuals and therefore employers in the workplace. So here is a horrendously tricky figure of the full logic model for why mental health has become a real and growing concern for employers primarily. Poor mental health has significant economic and social costs, but through targeted actions, firms can help support better mental health whilst becoming more productive. And that is one of the key drivers of the mental health and productivity pilot across the Midlands. It is being driven very much by employers to see how they can improve their own productivity. Now, that said, within that productivity relationship, we have certain inputs that are organisationally demanding. We have certain inputs that are individually demanding. The idea being that the composition of those inputs, activities and outputs, result in greater well-being of individuals and the workforce, which leads to greater attendance, reduced presenteeism and enhanced performance. So there are those explicit personal developments and personal development for the employee embedded within these processes. But ultimately, firms are looking to make productivity pay. This is a very complex program to show you that. And as you get the slides, you can look at these to try and unpick where mental health in the workplace can be reinforced through processes, policies, leadership, right down to the engagement of the individual. And what we tend to see is that we find effective mental health strategies and implementation interventions where we have significant organisational buy-in, whereas there is a visible commitment to the organisation to developing mental health in their employees, where we find that these activities are accessible to employees either in the workplace or outside the workplace. But what we find from a lot of the academic research is that the outcomes are really difficult to measure. So what we have is an organisational approach to mental health in the workplace. We have lots of academic research saying actually none of it's good enough. There is a line somewhere in between that leads us from the academic evidence to the practical implementation that will say we're going in the right direction. I've made sure that on all of these slides, all of these things are open access. So when you have copies of the slides, you can click on the links and actually find these for yourself to review at your own leisure. But the simplification of that mental health and productivity logic model is that improved and better managed mental health or improved well-being as a broader concept leads to better work performance as an individual, as an organisation, and therefore leads to greater organisational productivity. Now that all sounds brilliant and really easy to do, really easy to achieve, because everybody wants to buy in, because everybody is in this same box of employment within the same employer. Well, unfortunately, when we look at the academic research, and here is a unifying model of workplace risk factors, we have to go deeper into each workplace. And we find that there are really three key areas in a workplace that can be related through theoretical underpinnings to practical outcomes related to predominantly anxiety, stress, and depression. Because again, those are the most researched factors in workplace populations. It's very rare to find any research of this nature done in people specifically targeted as having diagnosed mental health conditions. So even this construction of a unifying model, these aspects will be exacerbated by certain mental health conditions. They will be exacerbated by people's different neurodiverse classifications, and ultimately they will be different for every single individual. But when we look at developing models, we look at developing interventions, generally they will be either context specific or profile specific. But what we find from the academic literature is that we have one aspect which is about imbalanced job design. Having high job demand and low reward leads to greater levels of stress, potentially anxiety and depression. There's an association between atypical working hours, so longer hours or shift work, and greater levels of mental health conditions. We also have a different angle that looks at the lack of value and respect in the workplace through things called relational justice and procedural justice, whereby there is a perceived imbalance between how the benefits and resources of organisations are distributed and to whom. We also have some aspects of occupational uncertainty. So your control over your own job, your ability to make decisions within your workplace is a very strong indicator of potential mental health problems. We also have organisational change, role stress, where we have two particular facets that are role ambiguity, so being clear about your role is, and then role conflict, whereby within your role, you may perceive yourself to have two or more conflicting activities within your role. So to put those three together, previous research has looked at meta-analyses to try and find out which of these are really the most important individual aspects in the workplace that create mental ill health conditions. And the key 8 that they've come through in terms of these are the ones that we need to try and focus interventions on. These are the areas that we need to try and focus individual attention to are job demands, effort and reward imbalance. So do I feel I'm putting in loads of effort but get very little reward? Occupational social support outside of the direct employment relationship, but in the work environment. The justice of how these rewards and benefits are divided amongst the employment sector, workplace conflict and bullying, role stresses, and your job control. Now, those are different for each mental health condition. They're different for each neurodiverse approach. They're different in each context. They're different in each employment sector. They are different for every single individual in each of those categories. That is the problem. Now, we have some resources out there that are nationally implemented. I've just picked up on Mind's information. There are mental health at work government sources, there are various local sources, there are various charity sources, but a lot of them all focus on the rather generic area of promote well-being. So for an organisation, say you're interested, tackle the causes of mental ill health. So potentially focus on some of those key areas in the workplace that the workplace can do something about, and then be there, listen, open and responsive to staff who identify that they have mental health problems. They're quite generic. Some of them may work. They may work for 60% of your population. They might work for 70% of your workforce, but they won't work for everybody. So that's the fact. One size does not fit all. There are some great resources, there are some great initiatives that are working well, but everyone's experience of a mental health problem is different. So this is according to Mind, says that managers should be supported to work with staff to develop a personal action plan which identifies triggers of what support the employee needs. That goes across a broad brush, workplace, mental health, intervention or programme. Further academic sources that I've cited there for you is that we should be aware that not all employees benefit from the same intervention. Work-related risk factors interact with individual personality characteristics, attitudes, coping styles to produce specific mental health outcomes. These things are so individualized, we cannot approach them all with a one-size-fits-all. So what do we have to do? Well, technology is fantastic. Technology is giving us the opportunity to individualize approaches, programs, tailoring specific elements of programs so that we can really now refine down. In the old day, we would have just got a presentation from a line manager to tell you what bullying was in the workplace, and that would be it. We now have the opportunity to follow up and interact with individuals about those aspects of their life. There's great evidence the potential of e-health interventions, low cost, there are alternatives to face-to-face interventions, and they can be more specific and more targeted to the individual. Diverse needs should be considered. Interventions should best fit the range of symptoms and will probably entail more than one type of application in any setting. Further down the line of technology, we now have M-Health, which is mobile technology health interventions. These are even more individualized because they are portable. They are generally permanently portable, and they can also be used with privacy and confidentiality on a personal mobile phone. So what do we find? Well, previous research in the academic area has started looking through particularly frontiers in artificial intelligence to try and find out, okay, M-Health, mobiles, they have this fantastic opportunity. What should an M-Health mobile app do if it's there to try and help people with their mental health? Well, there are 7 design recommendations, and we have used these in developing what Brett will be talking to you about shortly, a mate at work. These apps should include self-monitoring and, where possible, utilize automated behavior monitoring. That is a unique aspect. They should permit personalization and individualization to each individual within the same mental health condition or conditions. They should provide reminders for the users to report their self-monitoring data, but let the user tailor the nature and frequency of those responses. They should provide details and develop a credibility in the scientific endorsements to prove that these apps work. They should involve the implementation of rewards, praise, and motivational messages, and make sure that the app is simple and guide users through step-by-step processes. And they should also employ social support strategies, as people with mental health conditions often, but not always, feel isolated. If we can do this in a mental health app, I think we can revolutionize the way in which mental health is supported in the workplace, and particularly we can adopt an approach that, as the beautiful expression that Stuart used earlier, that is essential for someone and beneficial for everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Derek. That was really informative. Loved some of those insights into workplace issues. I've done a little bit of reading on that myself, and the job control is extremely important. And the other thing, obviously, is the bullying in the workplace. The statistic that I read recently, 70% of people leave their managers, not their organization. So if there's a history in your organization of people leaving one manager, for goodness sake, go and check it out. Derek, that was Fantastic, and it leads neatly into the next session, which is going to be given by Brett Griffiths. So Brett is an entrepreneur recognized as an expert in his field of lean, operational excellence, and people development. Brett is the owner of a company behind the development of a Mate app. And delighted to have you with us, Brett.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, as you said, Noel, I'm more of a technology person around people development, working with Derek and Michelle. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen so you can see my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to sort of go through a little bit about some research. Again, Derek touched upon this, and thank you, Derek, for that work. So I worked with Derek and Michelle in understanding how technology can be used to support in mental health. So we have mental health at work, Mate at Work, and we also have another platform around university. So it's really important to understand what those strategies are to do with mental health. So what I'm going to do is give you a demonstration today on how we have really thought about that research and built that into an application whereby it does give personalization and customization to give empowerment around the individual. Because when we look at different sorts of mental health, whether it be, oops, I don't know why that's not working. I can't get onto the next slide. There we go. So when we look at things like depression, for example, then depression for me may be different depression to somebody else. So as Derek said, the top 3 things for the developer in developing an app are things like self-monitoring, personalizations, reminders, and many others. And we believe that what we've done is incorporated that research into the development of the app. So again, I don't need to tell you guys about mental health in terms of the challenges, but we see that the mental health challenge is getting bigger and wider, and it's really understanding how technology can be used to be able to support the individual in terms of going through their mental health problem. And also being able for them to understand the triggers. And Dawn mentioned previously about masking, about how people mask their persona and how they are seen with others. So what this app enables people to do is to be able to look at those strategies behind that. So what I'm going to do is share my screen and show you not just screenshots and what have you, but a little bit about what the app is like. So if I minimize that, if you can see my screen. So so on the left-hand side is the app, and on the right-hand side is the dashboard that links to the user and the support network and the trainers and people that work with the individual to understand what's really going on. Now, one of the main I'll minimize that for a second. But one of the main features of the app is that the app allows the user not only to have a self-reporting through the app, but also it automatically links with either your phone or a wearable. Now, the great thing about technology and a phone is that it knows a lot about you. It knows about your behavior. It knows when you're going to bed. It knows what time you pick up your phone and you're on social media and other things like that. So it knows a lot about you. So we have strategies in the app that enables self-reporting as well as automated data. So we have a fairly basic screen here to make it simple for the user, once they've got the home screen open. So I've got it on my phone right now. So as I scroll through it, this is live, direct, from my phone into my computer. So we have contacts, my solutions, log a response. The red button at the bottom is a panic alarm in terms of what's the panic situation for them, and then insights and reports. So when a user logs in, I've already logged in, obviously, and there's a take a tour which takes the person through how the app can help them in the process. So it's an introductory part of the app, and then from there, what they can do is they set up their personal profile. So in their personal profile, it's about how the app is designed around them, you know, and making sure that the data in there and the information they want is based on what their requirements are. If they don't want certain people to see it, they don't have to do it based on confidentiality and privacy. So I'll very quickly scroll through some of these. So we have trainers. So I've set myself with the trainer, and the trainer is this person here. I can then scroll back, and I've then got a mentor, and this is the mentor that will mentor me through my mental health process. And I've also got a support network, which may be, you know, a family member, my brother, my sister, whoever, that's going to help and support me, that understands my condition. There's also an emergency contact. It could be, I've decided here, my dad and what have you. But again, if I wanted to add them, it's very easy. I just go into plus, I then add a photo, I add the contact name and the contact number like I normally would in a phone. And then I would put in their details and it would populate it into here. The great thing about the app is it knows wherever you are, because we've connected with the 4G, 5G technology. So if I go into location, I can see, you know, you can see I'm in Worcester, and I can plot various locations, whether it be my workplace or whether it be university or different areas, and therefore it's allowing me to know where I am if I'm not leaving the house based on depression. I may put in my setup that one of the problems I have is that I don't socialise enough, so therefore leaving the house is a bit of an issue. Well, you can set the system up whereby it knows that you're in the house, it knows you've not left the house in 1 day, 2 day, it can send you a nudge, it can send you a reinforcement, it can alert your support worker, it can alert your mentor, and all that is set up by the user, so therefore that they understand you know, what the setup is for things like that. I've then gone into the diagnosed conditions, and there are many different diagnosed conditions, again working with Derek on research to make sure that the right ones are in the list, that people can add their own. So again, at the plus button, if you want to add your own condition, you can do that. Again, if you want to change the name of the condition, so if it's anxiety, for example, I don't like the name anxiety, I don't really want anyone to know that I've got anxiety, I can change that name to Mickey Mouse if I wanted to. So it enables you to personalize what is being recorded and how it's seen on the screen. I've then got my response format, so I can use emojis, I can use flags, or I can use a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flags, or different emoji styles. We are adding more different styles of flagging systems, but really it's trying to keep it really clean and really simple to use. We then have the different factors. So the factors are the different areas that have been identified. So I've selected here important factors to me, you know, doing the physical exercise, time pressure in my job, and, you know, my workload, for example, based on work. Okay. Again, there are more factors down here, you know, vaping less, smoking less, feeling stress-free, feeling relaxed and calm, taking my medication, you know, you can see them on the screen, you know, spending less time in my leisure time sitting down, you know, job security. Work hours is a big one. I work with a lot of people that work, you know, many hours, that causes them stress, and come Sunday night they're getting worried about returning back to work on a Monday morning. So again, once I click onto these, I can then set my, so if I click one, for example, if I click the one around sleep, for example, I click sleep, I click onto sleep. Now, because I've already pressed that I've got anxiety and depression, does it affect anxiety, or does it affect depression, or does it affect both? So I've selected both. I go on to the next screen. and now I'm using my my range of sleep. So if I get 0 to, for example, let's say 4 hours sleep, then that's a very unwell me. Okay, because we have ranges from a very unwell me, an unwell me, an okay me, a well me, and a very well me. So if I'm getting between 0 and 5 hours sleep, then that's going to be a very unwell me. If I then get between, let's say, 5 there, and let's say 8 hours sleep, then that is a sort of okay me, for example. But sort of 8 hours sleep, I press plus again, because again, all this is personalization. I'm getting, between 8 hours sleep and 10 hours sleep. That's a very well me, for example. Oops. A very well me. However, if I'm sleeping too much and I'm getting, between 10 and 24 hours sleep, again, that's a very unwell me. So now I'm saying, okay, based on that, what do I want the app to do? Because it's personalized around me. So the very unwell me, I want it to send me a nudge, okay? Because I can send a nudge, I can do nothing, I can notify my support network, or I can alert my chosen support network. So I'm going to send a nudge, and that nudge might be a message, and I'm going to type in there, I don't know, get out of bed, whatever that might be, for example. And then I'm going to go to an okay me, and an okay me, well, actually, I'm going to send, I want to be able to send a photograph. So I can send a photograph, a video, which can go into my camera, or my library in my phone, so it pick up my photos in my phone, and then and it will play that video or that phone or that message as an alert to me. I will do the same for the very well me, a positive reinforcement, send me a nudge and what have you, and it can do that. So again, I can continue. It'll ask me now because I've not completed them all. But I won't do that. So I'll go into there. And then I've got my solutions. Again, I've added some solutions, about work. I can't seem to breathe or what have you. And then I've also got in here a video that it will play me a video on breathing because I've selected that video. I'll go back to the work-related ones. I've got a panic at work. Again, it's going to send me a nice picture of the forest. So again, it's sending me stuff that I've set up for myself on different scenarios. So there are different categories in here. I've added transport and work-related, for example. So again, that's the setup of the process. And then I go back to my home page, and then I can add a response. So if I add a response, I can then go in here, time, press to do my job. I've already added an alert today. I can add one. And because I put those two in there, which again, the text in there is what I've put in, and the text on the emojis I've added myself. So I'll personalize that. I've added that in. And then I've put in a photo of, a holiday home that I like as a positive reinforcement. If it's to do with physical activity, I can't add an alert because it's also tracking, because it's tracking from my phone, because I will have set it up in terms of physical activity. If I then want to look at that, I can look at my data, and I can select a factor. Actually, I don't think if I just put those two, it can give me a graph in here. So if I just quickly shoot over to this one here, where I've got more data in here, I can select what the factor is in here. Let's say getting enough sleep, feeling stressed, or whatever you. I can apply that, and it gives me the data around that. So I can see the differences between if I don't get enough sleep versus my anxiety or versus my depression. I can see the links between the two.
Brett?
Yep.
Thank you. That was, can I just say, I have had a sneak preview of this app before today, and I loved it. And I just thought it'd be a brilliant addition to today. And I think for everybody, you can see anyone suffering from depression or anxiety, and other things might benefit from a mate. So I'm hoping Brett and Derek, you'll be able to join Lucy's workshop on mental health later, and I'm sure you'll have people asking you more questions about this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's really around, say, the personalisation, but anybody wants to ask any questions or know anything, then please reach out to us.
So thank you very much. So the next bit of so Lisa, are we all back in yet?
We are.
Ah, so welcome back. Hope you've had a good time. I'm going to call on each of the workshop leaders to give me a 2-minute summary of what happened in your workshop. So I'm going to call on Janine first.
Yeah, we're really talking about 4 key aspects: leadership and engagement, people culture, the practicalities of good quality workplace adjustments, and then technology. It's all those elements integrating together to help you build a fully inclusive organisation. We've developed a handout. We're happy to share that with all of the delegates from the conference, so that if you didn't get a chance to attend the workshop, you can have a look at those key bullet points.
Thank you. Thank you, Janine. That was nice and quick and sharp. Liam?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I've got to learn from that. So we took the opportunity just to mind map out some things that we thought we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
Things that we were doing well. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, we feel, from the world of academic adjustments. You know, I refer to this small army of amazing people who are providing support, very formalized assessments, formalized support giving, and inclusive practices that we could bring into the workplace. We feel like assistive technology is doing really well. One-to-one support, the reasonable adjustments program in general is doing really well. But the things we'd like to see do better is this awareness raising, you know, be that line manager, access to events like this amazing event, actually getting people who aren't just responsible for this to actually come along and learn about stuff. Overcoming the barriers of IT departments when it does coming to actually deploying technology into their businesses, that they aren't stopping that because they think there's an alternative tool that could be better for them. Just in general, getting individuals to come forward, disclose, and feel like they can disclose. And I think a lot of it comes around, how do we normalize support? You know, it's a great example of making sure the captions are in every meeting, captions in all lectures. We standardize assistive technologies, we standardize support. Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah, oh, great. That's thank you. And I see you use the products as well. That's super. So next we've got Pujab.
Really like that, Liam, using the mind mapping tool.
Yeah, that
quite
was
creative.
Well,
so we had a really good discussion about sensory sensitivities, and again, some overlap with the other groups as well. So awareness is something that's quite important to implement out, and also the use of different tools that can be implemented as well, and to kind of dispel the stigma attached of using these tools as well. So we had a really good discussion that some are using sensory tools such as a squeezy ball that I've got in my hand, implementing out to everyone to use as well, to understand that these are things that can really help everyone, and to understand that when people are going through sensory sensitivities as well, what can that cause to the individual, and putting some workplace adjustments in place as well. But what we also identified is to use technology as well to support individuals, but also now that everyone's working in a hybrid culture, working from home as well, how does that look like when you're doing meetings or when you're working in this type of culture, is how to encourage the use of the adjustments in a more inclusive way as well. So these are the types of things that we were discussing in our group as well as support for parents and carers as well. So even adults can have adjustments as well, but starting on with supporting parents to support children as well, to use the types of technology tools that we discussed, and to build on the more inclusive practices in the workplace as well, so they can use that, these types of tools, and embed it on into the workplace as well. So it makes it more inclusive environment, empowers them to use and speak up and disclose as well.
Thank you, Pooja. So lastly, Lucy.
Hello, hi, yeah. So Afet and I introduced my mental health diagnosis condition to the group, and we discussed how at work I've been, how I've managed to navigate my way through a clinical career, a professional career with this, and the techniques and strategies that managers and colleagues can use to work with me, but also the responsibilities that are on me as the individual working in that kind of environment, when with those sort of symptoms and how they manifest. So we talked about the responsibility that I had to function in that environment, because we did talk about disruption and how other people might be influenced by our own behaviour. So I hope that we kind of got some really key, very tangible strategies for both sides, for the person with the condition and those working with them.
Thank you, Lucy. So quickly then, as an overview, Janine mentioned leadership and engagement, which she was the only one, but I think it's really important to kind of nail that one to the mast. There was lots, obviously, about the workplace adjustments and the technology to make sure we get that in place. Liam specifically mentioned things that, we do well, reasonable adjustments, that we don't do so well, the awareness. I think that was reinforced in Pooja's as well. Dispel the stigmas. And the other thing I think that Lucy mentioned is that, we do have personal responsibility as well. So it's important for us to communicate back up the line and make sure that our managers are aware and able to navigate this space with us. Lucy gave a great example in the mental health about setting boundaries. So that was the manager actually working to set boundaries, which I thought was brilliant. It was helping her to help herself. So that was the workshops. We're going to be sending out recordings of today, so you'll get that later, and there's going to be lots of white papers and some of the slides as well. So you'll get all those later. Before we finish up, I want to bring in Caroline Smith, who's the Executive Director of BATA. She just wants to have a quick word about what BATA is about. And thanks, Caroline.
Hi there. For those who don't know me, my name's Caroline Smith, and I'm the new-ish Executive Director of BATA. I'd just like to say the thank you to all the speakers and presenters for both days. It's been an extremely informative and inspiring event. So thanks to Noel and the team from BATA for all the hard work that they put in to organise it. It was amazing, fantastic. For those who don't really know, BATA are an assistive technology members organisation. We represent AT users, AT supporters, suppliers and manufacturers, and we have an interest, any AT interest at a government or policy level. Our aims are to campaign for the rights and interests for those needing or using AT, to provide expert and impartial support and advice to government departments, to educate and inform widely on the benefits of assistive technology, and to promote UK technology products and expertise at home and overseas. Now, we do this by running special interest groups like the Workplace Special Interest Group that has organised this wonderful event today, but we have others as well. So if you're interested, we kind of represent a wide sector of technologies across all spheres of AT. but we can't do that without any of our members. So if you would like to get involved, we would be really, really keen for you to do so. You can contact Noel or myself, or you can go to our website at www.bataonline.org, where we'll be happy to engage with you. It'd be great if you could join. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. So can you hear me? BATA is a brilliant organization. It's made up of all the people you've seen over the past couple of days and more. So brilliant skills in service and solutions. And if you're part of it, you get to know what the hell's going on all the time. And before I finish, can I just thank everybody involved in this? Thank you guys for coming and your courtesy. I have never seen so many chat comments, so your engagement has been really welcome. Can I thank all our speakers and contributors? I thought you were all fantastic. Just really, really great. And I think it showed the delegates what's possible if you're employing people with either disabilities or neurodiverse conditions or mental health issues. There's just lots of help out there. And finally, I'd like to thank Miles and Caroline and Lisa for just brilliant support. So that's it. That's the end of the 2 days. Thank you.